Let's get peppy. Welcome to PEP 204, the last PEP before the break. This is PEP or Planet Extra podcast. I am the host of Planet America on ABC Australia, which is also on break, but this is not an official podcast of the ABCs. Repeat, not an official podcast. On PEP, we do cover all the stuff that's too nerdy for TV, though. If you're listening, you can find us on YouTube at the PEP with Chaz and Dr. Dave channel, and you can also see highlights on the PEP Clips YouTube channel. You also find timestamps and show notes and our blurbs, and if you leave a comment under our current episode video, we are likely to see it. You can also tweet us or blue sky us at PEPCHASDRDAVE. That's at PEP Chaz Dr. Dave. If you want to chat to some fellow peppers, you can join our Discord server. It's on the screen right now or in the blurb of the podcast. But if you want to contact me or Lockie the Lackey privately, why not email us? Indeed. You can reach us at producer@pepthepodcast.com. Our address again is producer@pepthepodcast.com. I've been replying to a lot of those emails, Dave. You'd be very pleased to hear. A little less slack than I used to be. Well done, me. But for now, let's turn to the man who will never raise the stakes on inconsequential views. I'm talking, of course, about Dr. Pepper himself, Dr. Dave Smith. Hello, Dave.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I am David Smith. I'm an associate professor at the US Studies Centre at the University of Sydney. But I do not speak for either of those institutions. I am not institutionalized.
Oh, I see.
We are all surrounded by institutions, and some of us work for them. Yes. But that doesn't mean that we are one and the same with institutions.
Exactly.
And we certainly don't speak for them.
And some of us are not official podcasts for those institutions as well.
Yes.
Dave, we have a box in front of us. Now, this is a particularly poorly wrapped box.
Looks like one of my efforts, to be honest.
I don't want to trash. I mean, someone's given us a present, which is very, very nice.
Yes.
So I shouldn't have a go at their gift wrapping. But if you were going to take a course, whoever you are, I'd recommend gift wrapping.
Thanks, guys. That was a Lackey special.
Good stuff, Lucky.
So while you're unwrapping that, gents,
Yeah.
I'd like to play this little message for you that you've received from the people who gave it to you.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
This is a belated congratulations to Chaz and Dr. Dave on your 200th episode of PEP from your concerned friends and colleagues, and sometimes PEP guests. Now, we want to make it very, very clear that this gift is in no way an endorsement of 4+ hour long podcasts. In fact, if anything, you should view it as a hard limit enforcer. But it is also a token of appreciation for the effort you and the PEP team put into making sense of all the US politics news out there. When you started this, we were skeptical that there'd be an audience out there begging for poor quality audio of Chaz describing his favourite graphs. 200+ episodes later, you've shown there is. We are grateful for the improved audio quality and the graphs being shown in the video versions now. So thank you to Lockie too. From Scott, Richie, Melina, David, Craig, Charles, Dom and Kirsten.
Thank you
so
much.
Very
folks.
much. This is the best present I've ever seen.
For those who are listening and can't see it, this is a beautiful hourglass with, I think it's like volcanic sand, that kind of black sand.
It looks luxuriant.
This is beautiful. Do we know how, Lockie, do we know how long the hourglass is for?
Yes, so Chaz, do you want to quickly as well say who that was the voice of?
That was the voice of Kirsten Drysdale, who was she thanked herself. So, so back yourself there, Kirsten.
Yes.
but I will thank you as well, and I'll thank. For those who didn't recognise the names, they're all some of them are actual peppers, like guest peppers, like Richie and Melina. But then Scott he's been working with us for over a decade. He's the person who writes the sketches for Planet America, in case you're wondering. And Kirsten is probably our greatest supporter. She's got like a real life, and she somehow will stay up and just to listen to our podcast, which is amazing. So
And her own work is legendary.
it is.
Like,
it really is.
Seriously.
So Scott and Kirsten wanted me to forward on to you guys that they're sorry it's here a little later than PEP 200. The reason it's delayed is because it's hard to find anywhere in the world that makes a 4-hour hourglass.
Oh my God.
They had to get it shipped from Omaha, Nebraska, and it took a while to get through customs, but it is an appropriately American product.
That is
Oh my God.
wonderful.
Well, we've flipped it.
It's also a little top heavy, so make sure the balance is
Yeah.
equal.
Yes.
And Scott also wanted to point out, Chaz, you have a particular disdain for sand, so you might enjoy trapping sand.
Wow.
Scott's right. I hate the beach. I grew up on the beach and I hate it.
Okay.
And the 4 hours, that is, well, we're not going to hit it today, hopefully. You can't,
I can't.
but lucky I don't want to. This is such a nice present. We're going to have to find a place to put this. Maybe not today, but in future PEPs, we have to find a place to put this
Yes.
where people can see it. Honestly, folks, thank you so much. I am
Thank
tickled.
you.
I don't know how to deal with people being nice to me, so I'm sorry I didn't deal that well. But
This is why he got a dog, to learn what it's like
I do.
to have something that's nice to you all the time.
Yeah, so I as a result of that, I do want to lick you and eat carrots in front of you. Okay, we just white flashed then while we spent a few minutes trying to work out how we can possibly put that on the desk without it getting in someone's face in the shot. And the answer was you can't. So we've put it away for now, but we are going to find a place to mount
We
it.
promise the hourglass will be a regular part of the show.
And can I also apologise to the wonderful present givers, all of you, for dissing your gift wrapping ability when actually it's Lockie. That was at fault there. Anyway, Dave, apart from that lovely present from our best friends, what are you grateful for?
Okay, bit of a sad one today. I'm grateful for the life of Mia Love. So, Mia Love was the first black woman elected to Congress as a Republican, the first black person to represent a congressional district from Utah, first Haitian American to be elected to Congress. So she was a conservative Republican. She was elected in the red wave of 2014 and then lost in the blue wave of 2018. No one would dispute just her immense decency and integrity as a politician.
Yep.
And at a time when you look at 3/4 of Congress and think, what are you actually doing there? She was somebody who was there with a purpose. She never lost sight of that purpose, and she never, ever lost sight of her own values. And that actually made her a very effective member of Congress.
It also made her one of the first to be defeated when Trump came along.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So she was, she voted with Trump 96% of the time, but she was opposed to his steel and aluminium tariffs. And when she got voted out in 2018, he gloated, she didn't give me much love, and so she lost. So unfortunately, she died at age 49 of glioblastoma, which is a brain cancer. And yeah, she is a great loss. She was a visiting fellow, a non-resident visiting fellow at the US Studies Center as well.
Yep.
A few years ago, and just very decent, very thoughtful. Also a Mormon, a member of the Church of Latter-day Saints, and considering that was a religion where black people were, to put it mildly, very marginalised until the 1970s. That is, couldn't even become members of the church. On top of all of her other achievements, that was a significant achievement to be a very high-profile black Mormon. Yeah,
we interviewed her at length on the show that shan't be named, and I got to say, if she was still healthy today, she would undoubtedly be on PEP for an hour because she was so giving of her time, and I loved interviewing her as well. She was a great interview as well. She was definitely a quality person. So that's a good one, Dave.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep mine really short because we've been hourglassing for 10 minutes, and we're going to get to the content. I'm going to thank Phil and Bronwyn. A few people have noticed their peppers. They haven't noticed their peppers. They are peppers. A few people have noticed that I did say at the end of last year I was going to get into shape, and I have indeed gotten into shape. That's been largely with the help of Phil and Bronwyn. And I'm not going to be running ads for anyone, but if you want to know about them, you can just email me and I'll give you their details. But
so they're the ones who've disabused you of your various quack notions?
Look, I would say that they've replaced some of my quack notions that don't work with quack notions that do work. I prefer the ones that do work.
Okay.
So it's good.
That's good to know.
Yeah. No, they're good. They're good eggs. And they make me eat a lot of good eggs as well. I'm going to keep the correspondences and updates and all that kind of stuff short-ish. I got an update from PEP 202 was the last one? 203. Last one's 3. 203. Lara, yeah. 203. I had what was going to be a grateful for you about the bad portrait of Trump.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, because I knew you'd love that one.
That apple-cheeked portrait.
For those who didn't see it at 203, I'm talking about this portrait here, which Trump really didn't like. and I loved it. I love that portrait. I compared it to Dave in PEP 203 to one of those paintings from the 1700s or 1800s of like an exotic animal that they didn't really understand at the time. I thought, but the reason I brought that up is because what I didn't know at the time, I read you out Trump's tweet. He was going crazy about how bad that portrait was and how much better Obama's portrait was.
Yeah.
But I hadn't seen Obama's portrait at that point in time.
Oh.
And now I have.
Okay.
Why don't you show Dave Obama's portrait?
Jesus.
It's no better. And arguably it's worse.
What is
I think he looks like Pepe. You know, Pepe the frog? It's not a good look.
Amazing.
They should make a statue of that portrait and put it outside an NRL stadium.
That looks more like Michelle Obama than Barack Obama.
Oh, what a great call.
Did the artist just get very confused?
Maybe there's one of those if they had babies kind of numbers.
They do have babies.
I know, and they don't look like
that. They don't
that.
look like that.
They definitely don't look like that.
Yeah.
Good news for those babies.
All right.
Anyway, just want to share that with you, Dave, because I knew you'd love that.
Yeah, I thank you.
So, some more PEP-related updates. This is a beautiful update. As you all know, I'm keeping track on how long the Gulf of America map stays inside the Oval Office. Because I have a theory that Trump is more proud of the Gulf of America than anything else he has ever done in his life. Even all the things named Trump. I think he's prouder of the Gulf of America. And it's still there. This was last week when Laura Ingraham turned up at the Oval Office. And it's not just there, but you just watch for yourself what happened.
And this is very important. Very proud of this Gulf of America. And in fact, Elon said to me, you know, we're landing in the Gulf of America. So he was saying, and he said it naturally. He said it so routinely. He said, yeah, the capsule, you know, is landing in the Gulf of America. So I called Elon, where is it dropping down? He said, Gulf of America. How cool is that, right?
How cool is that?
How cool is that?
However cool it is, Donald, it's not as cool as you think it is. I promise you that. But how impressed was Laura Ingraham? Just look at that. Look at that. She's loving it. You can just imagine what. We should do a bit of a PEP competition of what Laura's thinking while she's staring vacantly.
It is just so impressive that all of the other C labels are in normal size fonts.
Yes.
But Gulf of America is about 3 times as big. Three times as big as the label that says North Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah, it's like font size 84 or something. It's huge. Yeah, that's good. But I feel that's another update. We'll just keep track of how long the Gulf of America. I'm gonna put money on the table right now. Actually, I'm not gonna say. Do you want to make a bet? How long you think? When do you think it leaves the Oval Office?
Oh, 4 years.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm going to put money on the table right now. That's going to stay there for the entire term. That's never going to leave the Oval Office.
He's going to try to get a law passed that it can't leave the Oval Office, that it's terrorism to remove the Gulf of America map.
He's put the Constitution on the wall. I reckon the Constitution is going to last less than the Gulf of America is going to last in that Oval Office. Democrats correspondence from Robert. I've just thrown this one at the last second, Dave, so this is without notice for you.
Okay.
I do sometimes give Dave notice. I haven't given him notice on this one.
Yep.
Forgive my ignorance on
Yes.
Democrats' rules, but can the DNC call for primaries this year? With no power in Congress and stacked Supreme Court, the Trump news cycle sucking all oxygen out of the few Democrats trying to make noise, wouldn't electing the next president of the United States give the Democrats a unifying figure and voice and a chance to cut through all the noise instead of being impotent until the midterms? Don't know if their rules allow it, but currently there's no meaningful alternative opposition. Well, look, I'll answer the direct question for you, and then you can answer the question that I think Robert actually means.
Yep.
The actual answer is no, they can't, because they've already got rules and regulations for the next primaries, and they can't just change them just like that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they could theoretically in the future change it for future terms, but it's too late now for to just instantly have primaries. The question, though, I think Robert really means to ask is, should they do that kind of thing?
My view is no. And I can understand Robert's frustration. It would be the frustration that just about everybody shares with the Democrats, that they just look worse than useless at the moment. Despite everything that they have to oppose, despite what should be very fertile ground of opposition, they just can't get their act together. I would like to point out, though, that this is very typical of parties that suffer devastating defeats. And the Democrats' defeat, it wasn't the most numerically devastating, but it's got to be one of the most emotionally devastating defeats a party has had in a long time. But not just in the US, in many, many countries, when a party has a really devastating defeat like this, for the first year afterwards, they're a complete rabble.
Yeah.
They are disunified. They are constantly infighting. There's a lot of backbiting going on. They look incredibly incompetent. This is all normal. That is just the consequences of defeat. Now, for that reason, I would suggest now is exactly the wrong time to try to choose a presidential candidate, because you're probably going to make a choice that you would regret before too long. They are just not in the emotional or organizational state to do that at the moment. Things will get better. Okay, this always happens. Fights gradually kind of work themselves out, or at least they reach some kind of equilibrium between the competing forces in the parties. As the Trump administration continues to make a grand old mess of things, that is going to give them more and more things to coalesce around. But now is not the time to be trying to fix things by saying, let's put the decisive stamp on the party now. Because who knows who they would choose at this point. So I understand the frustration, but I don't agree with that.
Yeah, I definitely don't agree with that as well. I think having someone look, let's be slightly partisan about this for a moment and just talk purely about Democrats. Democrats know, I think better than anyone, what happens when Republicans know who your nominee is going to be years ahead of the election. They get worked over by conservative media and Fox News, which are more powerful, I think, today than the mainstream media.
Absolutely.
Because they really know how to work someone over.
And they're more powerful than the Republican Party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And why would you give them 3 years to work, 3 unnecessary years to work over your nominee? That would make every single Democratic nominee from now on Hillary Clinton. Is that what you want? I think that would be a mistake. I think the best thing that Democrats can do is to get someone fresh. I think the party's on the nose at the moment. You don't want someone who's associated with the party. You want someone who either is just doing their thing anonymously as a governor at the moment, like say Maryland boy, what's his name again? Wes
That's how anonymous he is. We can't remember his surname. Wes something.
Wes.
The Washington Post keeps talking about him.
Yeah, whatever. Like, yeah.
I've never made it to the end of his name before, though, because Maryland politics is not my main area of interest.
Yeah, Wes Moore.
Wes Moore.
So it's not like Wes Moore, who's just doing his thing largely anonymously in the States and then, bang, explodes in 2 years' time. Or someone who...
We want Wes. That would actually be pretty good.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or someone who no one's even heard of at the moment, who turns up in 2026, or just like it's going to need to be a fresh face, I think. I don't think it's going to be Pete Buttigieg. I don't think it's going to be people who are associated with the last generation of Democrats. I think that's the best thing I can do. And you don't want them sitting there for 4 years becoming stale. I'll tell you what I would do. I haven't really thought about this much, but I was just thinking about it when you were talking. What I would do is, I mean, it's great to have a Democrat running some kind of resistance. And when it's the other way around, Republicans as well. But why don't you do something, why don't you take a leaf out of a parliamentary system and have Congress, the congressional Democrats, appoint a spokesperson for a particular portfolio? Like, especially people who are on committees. Like, you know, so you'd have someone on, you know, Treasury Committee or whatever, being the spokesperson for financial stuff, you know, like that. Like, so they've got an area of expertise already. If you just got a point person that whose job it is to study up on that stuff and talk about it,
Yeah.
I think that would solve a lot of the problems. It's worth a try. How bad can it go? Worse than they're currently going? Yeah, but I also agree with what Dave was saying about people just need to be patient.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, think about, I always say this, and I'm going to keep on saying it because we keep on getting this kind of correspondence. Remember the Republicans in 2010? And at this point in time in 2008, they're nowhere.
Yeah, yeah.
And 2009, they're nowhere. But by July, they're somewhere. And by October, they're really somewhere.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm sure the same thing's going to happen again. All right. But thank you, Robert. Quick education correspondence from Marianne. I talked about how Singapore was the head of every single league table in the world
Yes.
on education. Marianne said, it's much harder and much more expensive to run an education system that is geographically and demographically diverse than it is to run one in a city-state. This stuff makes it super hard to get really robust comparative data on education systems. Fair call, Marianne. Just want to put it out there. And just because we have to have it every single episode.
Smell the mosque. Yeah. Smell the mosque.
USA. USA.
Smell the mosque.
Smell the mosque. Okay. So I talked about Mark Kelly trading in his Tesla for a Tahoe last week, 202 with Melina. And I was going, dude, you're meant to be an environmentalist and you've just gotten rid of a green car, an electric car for a gas guzzler. And again, just because you don't like Elon Musk, I got a lot of feedback. Let me read you the first bit of feedback. This is from Nick. I think for a private individual, getting rid of a Tesla you already own is silly and bad for the environment. For a politician whose literal job is promoting political messages and one who's been publicly abused by Musk on a personal level, I think it's still a bit silly, but maybe a little less so. Now, the reason I read that out from Nick is because Nick's literally the only person who supported me at all. There were about 30 people who didn't support me. And I'm going to read the best of them. This is a clinic from Dan. Dan has combined every single reason why I was talking shit and has thrown them together into the one correspondence. So let me read it. I think the position that Mark Kelly, quote, didn't need to trade his car in just because you don't like Elon Musk is a bit silly, Chaz. And the idea that, quote, Elon Musk is not his car is just ridiculous. Elon Musk is currently an unelected private citizen running roughshod through the administration in known and unknown ways with no oversight whatsoever. There is currently no material way for anyone besides Donald Trump to do anything to or about Musk. Using Tesla, even if it's just ideological, is a perfectly reasonable way for Kelly to signal to constituents he does not support Musk or Doge. Which brings me to the next point. Tesla is absolutely Elon Musk. Amazon is Jeff Bezos. Facebook is Mark Zuckerberg. Microsoft is still Bill Gates, even if it isn't anymore. Tesla is the passion project and defining identifier of the man who popularized the modern electric vehicle. The Cybertruck alone is Elon Musk in car form. There's another thing that bothers me here as well. Why are we talking about Kelly and electric car hypocrisy at all? Kelly said very clearly in his video he was happy to own a vehicle made with union labor and specifically names the United Auto Workers. Tesla is notoriously the only car manufacturer in the US that's prevented its workers from unionizing, and then he mentioned the anti-union efforts of Tesla and Musk is perhaps the only other way Kelly can show his opposition to Musk. It's the same reason that Teslas, specifically Cybertrucks, are being vandalized. Again, Musk is an unelected figure, so there's no way for anyone to do anything about him. What else can anyone do besides signal, complain, and vandalise? As usual, great show, Chaz. Get some sleep.
Those are all fantastic points.
Yeah, that was a bit of a masterclass there.
Perfectly expressed.
No notes, Dan. 10 out of 10. Look, I'd say, I don't want to respond at all, really, because I thought that was just very well done. But I would just say one thing, which is you can buy an electric vehicle that's not a Tesla
That's true.
that has union labor. Because apart from Tesla, a lot of those, well, like the big car companies all use union labor.
Yes.
And they all make, I think they all make their own electric car. Certainly one or two of them do at the very
A
least.
few of them do,
Yeah. So it is possible that you and I can both be happy, Dan. But I am happy with your with your correspondence. It did tickle me. On the environmental thing, Jamie also says, not buying a Tesla if you're if you're an environmentalist is kind of redundant because the person he's supporting politically wants to drill, baby, drill. There's a bigger picture there, Chaz. Okay, fair call as well. Regarding Musk, it's a address he says, regarding Musk, Tesla and the environment, it's hard not to point out that Musk has aligned himself with the president and administration who are climate deniers and are doing everything they can to dismantle anything resembling clean energy or environmental protection. That point is also fair.
Yeah. And when your solution to everything is get your ass to Mars,
Yeah.
that is a fundamentally negligent position.
As far as the environment
Of the
goes.
environment,
Yeah. This is something I've talked about before. That all the expense of Mars will be a lot greater than the expense of just making the world not fall apart.
Yes.
And,
Speaking of falling apart,
Yes.
I've seen that Cybertrucks are vandalizing themselves,
yes.
which is terrorism. Send the Cybertrucks to El Salvador.
It's funny the domestic terrorism thing for vandalism. Look, by the way, I don't approve of people setting Cybertrucks on fire.
I don't approve of
And
that.
I know you don't as well. But just the idea of someone drawing a swastika on a Tesla, calling that domestic terrorism, I think is a bit much. And Trump talking about 20-year jail terms and sending them
in
to El Salvador.
yeah.
Sending them to El Salvador and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But on that note, I just wanted to say that the mothering of Elon Musk is getting out of control. It really is. Like Trump trying to sell his car for him.
Yep.
Bondi doing the domestic terrorism thing. Did you see Howard Lutnick last week?
Oh, yes.
Let's play this for people who haven't seen this.
This is an absolute disgrace.
I think if you want to learn something on this show tonight, buy Tesla. It's unbelievable that this guy's stock is this cheap. It'll never be this cheap again. When people understand the things he's building, the robots he's building, the technology he's building, people are going to be dreaming of today. And Jesse Waters.
Hang on. I'm sorry. I need to stop that clip right there. People are going to be dreaming of Jesse Waters? Is that our position? Poor people. By definition, it's a nightmare.
In an administration that has really been nothing but low points, that was a particularly low point. The Commerce Secretary going on TV and giving people what can only be described as terrible investment advice.
Yes.
Generally, whenever anyone goes on TV and gives investment advice, they have to clarify that they either are or are not a qualified financial advisor.
I think people can assume he is not.
Yes. And then Fox News choosing to run a graphic of Tesla's on fire while he is telling people, the stock's never going to be this low again.
Yeah. Has any cabinet member in history ever seemed more like a used car salesman than Howard Lutton?
A used car on fire sale.
It's a fire sale.
Yeah.
Anyway,
no, that was pretty bad.
It's getting out of control. And by the way, I mean, I shouldn't have to, I shouldn't need to say this, but I will. That was completely against the law. Like, I know we don't care about the law anymore, but a government official going on TV in their government capacity to promote someone's stock
yes,
is against the law.
Yes.
But no, obviously, no one's going to prosecute him. And one more thing on actually a couple of things on Elon Musk as well before we leave Smell the Musk. Clousey says, can we stop with Elon founding Tesla?
Very good point.
He was an early investor, then kicked out the original founders. He's not a genius engineer. He's skilled at investing in companies and in industries and directing the capital effectively. The only car he participated in designing was a Cybertruck, which has poor safety and usability.
Yeah. And he was there at the time when the government gave Tesla its crucial lifeline.
Yes.
Yes.
Just to be fair, he's referring to Melina there. Melina doesn't actually think he's some great engineer. She was being nice.
Yeah, but that is how he's widely referred to, and it's incorrect.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then the final thing is Lara, actually, from PEP 203, pointed me to this piece of gold off air, which I want to share with you, Dave. Have you seen this?
No, I have not.
This is a song for those about to listen called "We Thank You, Elon Musk." Now, I want you to pay attention to this, and I want you to ask yourself, is she kidding or not? Because I'm not 100% sure
Is
either
she
way.
in a Cybertruck?
She is in a Cybertruck.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Let's watch a bit of this.
He gave us cars that drive so fast, made rockets built to blast. Oh, thank you, Elon Musk. He took over Twitter's reign. He saved free speech for all, eliminating woke pain. SpaceX flies, Tesla self-drives, Starlink beams with laser dreams. He's got a master plan for our lives. Let's occupy Mars. Let's occupy Mars.
I wanted to play along because it starts off sounding like it's going to have a standard song structure with rhymes and stuff.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
then it
yeah.
just drops them. And it has really sort of like it's sort of halfway through she just stops even trying to rhyme and try and have some consistent meter and like a chorus structure and anything that resembles a song really.
Yeah.
It just starts to wander.
And it's not synced.
Yeah.
Like the sound is not synced with the vision.
Yeah, it's appropriately enough, actually, it feels to me like it was written by AI. I'm not sure it was Grok or not.
Oh, yeah, it must have been written by AI.
Maybe it was. Maybe that's the
Making
joke.
kids to keep mankind alive.
Yeah.
He makes the cars that drive so fast.
Maybe that's the joke.
Ending woke pain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like if it's a joke, it's a very expensive joke.
Yeah.
Or a very expensive looking joke.
And a very subtle joke and a slightly confusing joke.
Yeah.
Anyway, thought I'd share it. It's because I told you in many previous peps, I like shit stuff. So that's why I shared it. One more correspondence, and then we'll move on to the content. This is Lara correspondence. Actually, it was Christian right correspondence from Lara's PEP 203 is from TO, and I feel it's an interesting one. Nice interview with Lara. I dislike the talk of the Christian right, though, and their supposed war against the queer agenda. If anything, I'm probably in the middle of the Christian right at the moment. I'm employed in ministry with a conservative denomination. I'm studying at a conservative Bible college. There's been literally no mention on any note of fighting the queer movement other than how to respond with love while not compromising on our faith. Even that's more general around anyone who might have a different position on anything, not tied to gender or sexuality per se. It just isn't something we go to war on post-gay marriage in Australia. I think it's more a cultural right thing to fight over than a Christian right thing. Lara also mentioned to the governor, who's a Christian, who said, they're people made in the image of God and I love them and want them to feel included. Now let's move on and focus on important stuff. That's the sentiment I hear when it gets raised. And I just want to share that because, that's very easy when you see American Christian writers to go, well, that's the Christian right everywhere. And maybe this is just T.O.'s personal experience, and if he wanders down to the next Bible college down the road, it might be completely different. But I just thought I'd share that.
I think that's probably fairly typical of Australia. Important to note, he's actually involved in ministry. He's actually involved in the Christian side of the Christian right. A lot of what we refer to as the Christian right is culturally associated with Christianity, but doesn't necessarily have a lot of religious content. I wrote an article once about the differences between the Australian Christian right and the American Christian right. I can put a conversation version of that in the
homework.
In the homework.
Yep. So look in the blurb, you'll find it right there. Thank you for that, Dave. Let's get into content. Let's start with the story, which I know you all want to hear about because I have seen so many people in the comments and in tweets going, I can't wait for you guys to weigh into this story. Of course, talking about whatever gate you want to call it, signal gate, emoticon gate. Maybe it's just a picture of a gate. I don't know. Dave, tell us all about it.
Look, I'm going to assume that everyone knows about it, but that's not going to stop me from telling the story right from the beginning. Yeah. Okay, so at the center of this story is Geoffrey Goldberg. If I call him Jonah Goldberg at any point, just pretend I didn't. It's Geoffrey Goldberg that I'm talking about. Geoffrey Goldberg is the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic. Now, for people wondering, where's the media resistance this time around? Why are we seeing the New York Times and the Washington Post and ABC cave? The Atlantic is conspicuously the magazine that has not done this.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
The Atlantic is a resistance central. It is still pumping out the kind of centre-right and centre-left takes that characterised the resistance in 2017. And so Jonah Goldberg is leading that. Jonah Goldberg...
Jeff Goldberg.
Jeff Goldberg.
Times two.
Jeff Goldberg. So Jonah Goldberg works for National Review. Okay, so Jeff Goldberg.
Jonah Goldberg is going to join the next Signal chat, I feel.
Yes. We're not adding Jeff Goldberg again. Okay, so Jeff Goldberg he's very executive and national security minded. So he's very well known for his reporting on that stuff. Geoffrey Goldberg is, not some product of the howling anti-war left.
No.
Okay, he actually dropped out of college to go and join the Israeli military and was a prison guard and wrote a book about it. He's what you would call pretty security-minded.
Yep.
And look, it's probably good that they landed with someone so security-minded who had the sense not to start broadcasting it, before the attacks even happened. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So we've got Geoffrey Goldberg, who, among other things, reported that Trump had absolutely no respect for the United States military. when he was president.
He's a suckers and losers writer.
Yes, yeah. He's the one who reported that Trump referred to soldiers as suckers and losers. Yeah. He's also the one who reported that Barack Obama actually thought that European countries were not paying as much as they should do for their own, for their own defense. But anyway, he is a very, very fierce critic of the Trump administration, and he's a credible critic of the Trump administration as well. It's not like they accidentally added the guy from Midas Touch Media who, there's plenty of people, if they reported on this, no one would believe them. So they pick one of the most critical and also one of the most credible Trump critics.
Yes.
Okay, this is not Violent J from Insane Clown Posse. They didn't add a favourable journalist like Ben Shapiro. No, they go with Geoffrey Goldberg. Now, why was it that Geoffrey Goldberg accidentally got added to this chat?
That's the question.
There's a lot of speculation that, so clearly somebody had his contact details, might have been Mike Waltz who had his contact details. There are some hardline MAGAists who are very distrustful of Mike Waltz. They see him as a neocon holdover.
Yep.
And for them, the real scandal is that Mike Waltz had Jeff Goldberg's phone number at all.
To be clear,
Yes.
Jeff Goldberg in the article said,
Yes.
I quote,
Yes.
I received a connection request on Signal from a user identified as Michael Waltz.
Right.
So it's either Mike Waltz, or it's one of his staffers.
Yeah, it's someone using his account.
Yeah.
By the way, also, it's fortunate probably that they added Jeffrey Goldberg rather than Jeffrey Toobin.
Yes.
Because if they'd added Jeffrey Toobin while everyone's putting in American flag emojis, they probably would have got some images back that were not American flag emojis.
Well, in this case, in this chat, everyone else was doing the masturbating rather than Jeffrey Toobin.
Anyway,
just for a change.
So basically, however it happens, they accidentally add possibly the worst person that they could have added from the point of view of damage to credibility. There's one theory that it's because he has the same initials as James Gear, who is
Jamison Greer.
Jamison Gear,
Yeah.
who is a trade representative for Europe, and given that this was framed as being all about protecting European trade, he should have been on it, but he wasn't.
And he's also on the National Security Council.
Yes.
So he'd be a good person to be there. But having said that explains. Sorry, I'm interrupting you.
No. Go ahead.
That explains why, say P. Hegseth would see JG in the chat and not think twice because they go, oh yeah, that's Jamison Greer.
Yeah.
Because they cover their initials.
Yes.
That doesn't explain how he was added. Because to be
That's
added,
right, yeah.
you need to explicitly pick that person.
Yes.
So, and you need to have their details. Why would Mike Waltz or any of his staff even have Jeff Goldberg's details? You can't randomly add someone without having their details.
Oh, I don't think there's any mystery why they have their details.
well,
all of these people would have a lot of details of a lot of journalists.
No, I know, but Jeff Goldberg of all the people, the fact that Mike Waltz clearly, or one of his staffers, leaks to Jeff Goldberg, that is what you can conclude from that. That is certainly what the MAGA people are concluding from that.
That is what they're concluding.
Yeah, that's a real problem for Mike Waltz.
Yes.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Go on.
So he gets this contact from Mike Waltz. Then Mike Waltz adds him to this chat, which is Hootie's PC small group. So Hootie's clearly referring to the attack they're going to have on the Houthis. PC, that means Principals Committee.
Yeah.
And this is some particular subset of the Principals Committee. The screenshots that Geoffrey Goldberg has shared clearly show the words Mike Waltz added you. So the suggestions that Trump and Waltz and others are making, that Geoffrey Goldberg somehow hacked his way into the conversation or bluffed his way into the conversation, don't hold a lot of water. However it was done, and for whatever reason, Mike Waltz added him to the group.
Yes.
Okay. So he gets into this exciting group chat, and the first thing that he's seeing is a bunch of people nominating their office point people for this operation that is taking place. And then the discussion begins. One of the first things that we see in the discussion is JD Vance saying, I think we're making a mistake. Oh, you might think. Interesting. And a lot has been made of this, like JD Vance, the dissident. Yeah, JD Vance, the skeptic of intervention. You know, I think that this is all a bit overblown when you look at what JD Vance was actually saying.
Go on.
JD Vance was not really talking about the mission itself in the sense of, is it wise to bomb a country that has already been bombed so much? What will this actually do? The only consideration that anyone had of what this will actually do was JD Vance saying it could cause a moderate spike in oil prices. What JD Vance was concerned about was the messaging and the timing.
Yes.
Okay, so for JD Vance, killing people is all about messaging, right? Which makes sense given what his role was in the Iraq War. It's essentially doing PR. Okay, so he was saying that he said the president doesn't realize how out of step this is with his message on Europe. Okay, so this comes back to their complaints about how the United States is paying for European defense.
Yes.
And the reason why Trump wants these attacks is to keep shipping lanes open. But as Vance points out, with an admirable command of facts, I don't know, I haven't fact-checked this. It says 40% of European trade goes through the Red Sea, but only 3% of American trade. What I actually liked about that, it's a callback to Trump's 1987 open letter to the New York Times and the Washington Post and the Boston Globe, which was complaining about the US guarding oil shipments through the Red Sea, of all places. So maybe this is like a deep cut reference for all the long-time fans, but probably not.
Well, how do you respond to that quote you said before? I mean, I got the exact quote
Yes,
here.
yeah.
I'm not sure the president's aware how inconsistent this is with his message on Europe right now. Isn't that a nice way of saying the president's stupid? Isn't that something that people are a little bit concerned about?
This is what people have been salivating about. Like, is JD Vance going to get into a lot of trouble with Trump here because he seems to be suggesting he's stupid?
He certainly put out a really sucky statement afterwards.
He did put out an extremely sucky statement.
So the vice president's first priority is always making sure that the president's advisors are adequately briefing him on the substance of their internal deliberations. Vice President Vance unequivocally supports this administration's foreign policy. The president and the vice president have had subsequent conversations about this matter and are in complete agreement.
Complete agreement.
Yeah.
And he's also saying that just given where the economy is, they don't necessarily want a spike in oil prices now. He says, let's maybe wait a month, see where the economy is. And other people in the chat actually agree with him. Yeah, we could wait a month. Conditions will be exactly the same. In other words, this isn't actually an urgent national security mission at all. Now, whatever Vance meant by this, I just really want to get this out of the way. As again, nobody is questioning the basic wisdom of should we bomb Yemen.
No.
Nobody is actually questioning that. Now, to go back to some things that we have said before about this, one of the reasons why the Houthis have so much power in Yemen, one of the things that puts them in a position to be able to attack Red Sea shipping is because that country has been so devastated, not just by internal conflict, but by the air war that was waged by Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Currently, there are estimates that 80% of the population is dependent on food aid in Yemen. And in that country, the Houthis are one of the few stable sources. They're violent, they're repressive, they're brutal, but they can actually provide people with a paycheck. They can provide people with something to do, and they can provide people with weapons. Every American bomb that is dropped on Yemen is a political gift to the Houthis. And that's why last year, when we were talking about should Biden go after the Houthis, I said no, right? I said the big problem here is the fact that the developed world's economy depends on things like being able to sail ships unmolested past the poorest countries on earth. Right? That is the big picture problem here. You're not going to solve that by bombing Yemen. All you're going to do is kill people and drive them further into the arms of the Houthis. That's what an anti-interventionist would actually point out, right? Whether they're on the left or the right. And I think that a large part of what used to be the anti-war right somehow mistook Donald Trump for Ron Paul back in 2016 and have been committed to the bit ever since, right? And I would put J.D. Vance in that kind of lineage. Donald Trump is no Ron Paul. Donald Trump is not an anti-interventionist. Donald Trump wants intervention on different terms. He wants intervention on terms that will bring direct material benefits to the United States. Okay? This is what J.D. Vance is defending. What J.D. Vance was concerned about was that, as far as he saw it, the United States was doing a massive favour for Europe without extorting them in return. So that came along later on in the chat where they start talking about, we need to make it clear to Egypt and Europe that we demand remuneration for this. Yeah. Now, it's been widely pointed out they're ignoring the fact that there are European ships performing military duty in the Red Sea all the time, trying to escort commercial ships. It's not like the Europeans are doing nothing. Those American planes, they depend on refueling planes from European countries, including the UK. It's the typical kind of the damn Europeans, they're not doing anything, ignoring the fact that anything that the United States does in this part of the world is with European cooperation. Okay. So, but none of this actually gets considered in the chat, just the basic question of, is it a good idea to bomb Yemen? Trump has declared that they will bomb Yemen. Their only quarrels are with the timing and with the messaging. There's no actual skepticism of intervention going on here.
That is true.
Yeah.
Can I give Vance, I know every time I give Vance any credit for anything, I cop shit.
Yeah.
But can I give him credit for one thing, which is, at the very least, his preferred position was to build public support for a war before undertaking it. Even if he's just going with the crowd here and going, yeah, we'll do it. Like he explicitly said something. He said there is a real risk that the public doesn't understand this or why it's necessary. He also said, I'm willing to support the consensus of the team and keep these concerns to myself, but there's a strong argument for delaying this a month, doing the messaging work on why this matters. And just the fact that he's the only person in that chat who even considered that you should have public support for a war. I'll give him, it's not much credit, but I'll give him some credit for that.
Yeah. No, it's true the public doesn't understand why this is necessary, and they're correct.
Yes.
By the way, I would like to point out as well, one of the lines coming out of the White House after all of this blew up was, the media's just trying to distract us from the great job that the US military did in bombing Yemen. I guarantee far more people now actually know that the US bombed Yemen than were aware of it when they did it 2 weeks ago, when everyone instead was worrying about the tariffs that Trump was putting on Canada and Mexico.
I think that's a fair call.
If anything, it's been great publicity for that. Okay, so the chat goes on, and initially Geoffrey Goldberg didn't publish the stuff that Pete Hegseth wrote in terms of what was going to happen in the operation. Now, of course, the very eye-catching title of Geoffrey Goldberg's article, I remember I saw it at 4 a.m. when I woke up, was "The Trump administration texted me its war plans."
Yes.
The use of the term war plans has been very controversial here. In the article, he says he was talking about the timing and sequencing of attacks. He was talking about the types of planes that would be used. Yep. And Geoffrey Goldberg still, at this point, wasn't quite sure that all of this was real. Yeah, he thought it was possible this was some hoax or some practical joke. It wasn't until the attacks then happened exactly as Pete Hegseth said that they would happen, that he decided this was definitely real. It was then he took himself out of the chat. Like, I wonder if anyone in the chat at that point why is JG left the chat? But they obviously would have found out a few minutes later. Then he started publishing stuff. Okay, this has obviously dominated the news for about the last 72 hours.
Yep.
So the very first response was basically silence from everybody involved, leaving it to, I think it was a White House spokesperson, to actually say, this is authentic.
Yeah,
This was the very first response.
Yeah, it was Brian Hughes.
Yeah, Brian Hughes. They looked at the material. They said that this is authentic.
Yeah.
So that was actually the very first thing that came. So everyone knows right from the get-go that this is real. And that has considerably weakened all of the lines of attack that have come out since then, describing it as a hoax, or saying that he was lying, trying to discredit him. Because no, everybody knows it's real. Everybody can see the screenshots, and among the screenshots he posted were the emojis. My God, the emojis. I think Marina Hyde said it best. She said it's exactly the same emojis that these guys would use if they were watching Bryson DeChambeau making a mildly difficult shot at the West Palm Beach Pro-Am. like it's just the lamest sort of American flag, fist, flames, double biceps.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. This is how these people actually talk in private. When Pete Hegseth lands, okay, so Pete Hegseth, I think, was in midair when all of this broke. He was on his way to Hawaii. He was no doubt briefed.
He was on way to imagine a motorcon of a woman in like a luau and hula skirt.
Yes, yeah. So he was briefed. So, okay, even though it was Mike Waltz who made the catastrophic mistake of adding Geoffrey Goldberg to the thread, it's widely believed that it's Pete Hegseth who has potentially broken the most laws by posting classified material.
Oh, I'll jump into that soon.
Okay.
You keep going.
Yeah. But anyway, he was the one that everyone wanted a response to. But that's also partly because he is much more of a hate figure than Mike Waltz is.
Yes.
Very few people
definitely
have much of an opinion on Mike Waltz one way or the other. Everybody's got an opinion on Pete Hegseth. So Pete Hegseth lands in Hawaii, slanders Geoffrey Goldberg a little bit. And
we got the clip of that.
Yes,
Why don't we have a look?
Yeah, let's just have a look.
One question.
Can you share how your information about war plans against the Houthis in Yemen was shared with a journalist in The Atlantic? And were those details classified?
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again, to include the hoaxes of Russia, or the fine people on both sides hoax, or suckers and losers hoax. So this is the guy that peddles in garbage. This is what he does.
Why were those details shared on Signal, and how did you learn that a journalist was privy to the targets, the types of weapons used?
I've heard I was characterized. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that.
Right,
Thank you.
Yeah, a little bit over-rehearsed there, I feel.
It was so rehearsed.
Yeah, I reckon that's a 4 out of 10.
Yeah. Like, given how much time he had on that plane to get it right.
It was interesting though that the first half was running the hoax line.
Yes, yeah.
But then he debuted the new line. Like, because that wasn't enough for him. He had to have 2 lines of defense. So he debuted the no war plans line, which then took over for the next 24 hours after that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So he's insisting no war plans. Now,
which was a dumb line.
A very, very dumb line. One of the reasons why it was dumb was other people in the Trump administration started picking it up.
Yeah.
Now, so Tulsi Gabbard and John Ratcliffe were being grilled in front of Congress
Just coincidentally.
Yeah.
Like they were already booked to be grilled.
Yes. Yeah. Because the National Threat Assessment is coming out.
Yeah.
Now, they were both on the chat. They were saying as little as possible as they could about. And to be fair, neither of them had participated very much in the chat, apart from John Ratcliffe nominating his office person, who that's the name of a CIA agent, which you're not really supposed to. Broadcast.
But he's not much of a sinner compared to Hegseth.
Yes, in that way. So they were getting into all kinds of trouble in their attempts to evade responses, especially on the question of what was classified and what was not.
Yeah, well, if I could just pick up. I'll just pick up there in that for those who aren't seeing the obstacles here and the issues here, there's a difference between classified and war plans.
Yes.
Because classified is not the thing that's illegal. War plans is the thing that's a defense information.
Yes.
When we go through the statutes, you're going to see defense information is the thing that they need to most watch out for.
Yes.
And so Gabbard was, I think, intelligently, or whoever advised her, was intelligently trying to get her to not make it about war plans like Hegseth stupidly did.
Yes.
But to make about classified information.
Yes.
For a couple of reasons. Number one, because that avoids the actual breaking of the law. And number two, much more importantly, Pete Hegseth has the power of declassification.
Exactly.
He can't de-war plan a war plan.
No.
But he can declassify classified information, which means even in hindsight he can.
Yeah.
So he can. If all the stuff that was published in the chat was classified at the time, Pete Hegseth can go, no, it's no longer declassified. So now then Gabbard can get up and not lie when she says, I absolutely 100% guarantee there was no classified information in that chat.
Yes.
So it's a much more intelligent way of trying to spin.
Yes.
And that's what she tried to do.
Yes.
And I have some footage of that. Do you want to talk a little bit more?
I think they both also said they denied that there was any classified information. Then they kind of went back on it, saying each of them said, I haven't put out any classified information, and they got picked up on. That's not what you said. You said no classified information. But by the end of the day, what they kept coming back to was, well, Pete Hegseth says.
Yes.
Pete Hegseth said, like they are clearly setting him up for the fall.
There's a lot of, I defer to the defense secretary.
I defer to the defense secretary.
What I've got here is I've got two clips to illustrate. The first of which is Gabbard just running straight the classified line, which you can see here, and you can see her also deferring to the defense secretary. We'll just watch that.
Secretary Hegseth put into this group text a detailed operation plan, including targets, the weapons we were going to be using, attack sequences, and timing. And yet you've testified that nothing in that chain was classified. Wouldn't that be classified? What if that had been made public that morning before the attack took place?
Senator, I can attest to the fact that there were no classified or intelligence equities that were included in that chat group at any time.
So the attack sequencing and timing and weapons and targets you don't consider should have been classified?
I deferred to the Secretary of Defense and the National Security Council on that question.
Well, you're the head of the intelligence community, and you're supposed to know about classifications. So your testimony very clearly today is that nothing was in that set of texts that were classified. I'll follow up on Senator Wyden's question. If that's the case, please release that whole text stream so that the public can have a view of what actually transpired on this discussion. It's hard for me to believe that targets and timing and weapons would not have been classified. Well,
in that clip, you can see she's just holding it together, like it's been stuck together with sticky tape and a bit of clag, and the fact they've got hours at her just chipping away like that. She would have had that sinking feeling.
Yes,
but then it got to the point where it was just becoming so ridiculous that even Ratcliffe jumped off and basically just threw her under the bus, which I don't think Gabbard appreciated. But I've got that moment right here.
The deliberation as to whether or not we should launch a strike on another country, would you consider that classified information, Ms. Gabbard?
Well, the information was not classified.
This is not, I'm not talking about this. I'm just talking about deliberation from principals as to whether or not we should launch a strike on another country. Would you consider that classified information? I'm not talking about what happened this week.
There are other factors that would go into determining that classification.
Mr. Ratcliffe, the deliberation between principals in our national security apparatus about whether or not to strike another country, would you consider that to be classified information?
Pre-decisional strike deliberation should be conducted through classified channels.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that was the moment when Ratcliffe said, I give up.
Yeah.
That was Mark Kelly, by the way, doing the question. It was quite a clever way to question him, actually. I thought.
It was. And if you actually cared about national security and the credibility of the United States government, saying that this information wasn't declassified is a ludicrously short-sighted defense. Because if that kind of information isn't classified, then what is classified?
Oh, yeah, it makes you look incompetent. But
makes you look incompetent and that you fundamentally don't care about secrecy on any level.
But I do emphasise it's still infinitely better than the no war plans defence.
That is
because Geoffrey Goldberg, as they all knew,
yes,
had screen caps of him of Hegseth saying 12:15 Eastern Time, F-18s launch, first strike package, 1:45, trigger-based F-18, first strike window starts, etc. Like he literally did a timetable of when all the planes would leave and where they'd leave from.
Yes.
It was so that was really dumb.
Yep. Now, for a while, it looked like Hegseth and the White House, as they were trying to attack Goldberg's credibility, that what they were relying on was that he was actually so national security minded that there was no way that he would publish this stuff. However, they went a little bit too far by saying that there's no classified information in there. When you say there's no classified information in there, that's basically, okay, green light to publish.
Yes.
And Goldberg was clearly sick of people claiming that he was running a hoax.
Yeah.
So the next day, they published the information. And the information was exactly how Goldberg had described it in the original article.
Yes.
It was sequencing and timing of attacks. It was the weapons and planes involved.
Yes.
Now, okay, so as I said, the title had been the Trump administration texted me its war plans. Pete Hegseth had already got on the war plans thing. And so then Pete Hegseth starts running the line, that's not war plans.
I haven't seen this.
He said, I'm in the I'm meeting the commanders of the Indo-Pacific Command, the guys involved in actual war plans. Right. So the line they're running is this isn't war plans. And okay, so this might strain credibility.
Yeah.
Caroline Leavitt said, okay, because when The Atlantic then published the war plans, they said, I think that the headline was, here are the attack plans that were disclosed.
Yes.
Caroline Leavitt said, The Atlantic has conceded that these weren't war plans.
Yeah, because the headline said attack plans.
These were attack plans. Now, I don't know if this is a legitimate distinction, but it's a ridiculous one.
Yes.
If it is. David Sanger, who's the New York Times national security correspondent, reflecting the timidity of the New York Times, said, oh, well, yeah, a more detailed war plan would involve things like attack coordinates as well.
Come on.
Yeah, so, okay, so we can be grateful about the fact that Pete Hegseth didn't tell them the exact attack coordinates. But, these are definitely plans for acts of war.
Yes.
Now, if if that is not technically referred to as war plans within military jargon, fair enough. You know, military jargon is very specific. But in terms of ordinary language, those are war plans. The other line that Hegseth has been running is these weren't plans. This was just updating people on the timeline of actions. Now, an update on events that haven't taken place yet is called a plan.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so the no war plans line is completely absurd. Look, I feel we haven't even talked yet just about the basic things that are wrong with using Signal as a platform.
We haven't.
Okay. Which may seem like one of the most obvious things, but even now we're seeing lines coming out of the White House and from other parts of the Trump administration suggesting it's no big deal that you use Signal. Okay.
Interesting.
So Signal is, as far as apps that anybody can get from the App Store goes, Signal is one of the more secure messaging apps.
Yep.
So journalists often use it. It's encrypted. It's a lot better than, say, Facebook Messenger. And also it has an auto-delete function.
Yep.
Another reason why journalists like it. Messages just disappear. Okay, but it is nowhere near the same level of security as the systems that the United States government uses for classified information. Okay, so these systems are referred to as the high side. Now, the high side has very physical components to it. There are only certain devices you can use, certain phones, certain laptops that are made and issued by the government. And the thing about these devices is you can't plug another device into them, right? This is what secures them from any kind of interference or hacking.
Yeah.
Furthermore, there are only certain places where you can use them. Officials have designated places in their houses where they can use them, obviously places in their offices. If they're traveling, they have a team that goes with them that can set up these mobile spaces. Now, obviously, this is all very cumbersome.
Just before you go on.
Yes.
How do we know? I mean, I know the answer to this,
Yes,
but this is what people might be thinking.
Yeah.
How do we know that they weren't using their mobile phones or using the app Signal inside one of those skiffs, one of those secure locations?
Yeah, look, that is a very good point, but you're still not allowed to use Signal for that because the platform itself isn't secure, right? It's not just the devices that need to be secure. It's the platform itself that needs to be secure. So the platform is still vulnerable even if you're using it on a secure device.
There are messaging apps that you can use. There are government messaging apps that you can use in a secure form.
Yes.
They didn't choose to use that.
They did not.
And one of the bits of speculation going on is the reason they didn't do that is because when it's a government provided app, it's consistent with all government regulations, which means all the conversations will get stored, which is what they're meant to do.
Is one of the reasons why this conversation was illegal.
Yes.
They were having a conversation that should have been recorded and stored.
And the speculation is they deliberately were using Signal so it wouldn't be stored.
Yes. Now, so that's what's wrong with Signal. Also, this should be so obvious that I don't need to point it out. On those government secure systems, communication systems, it would be impossible to accidentally add Geoffrey Goldberg to the chat.
Yes.
Right? That just wouldn't be able to happen.
I've got two more things that are wrong with Signal.
Yes.
Witkoff, the envoy for Trump, I don't even know what he's an envoy of anymore. He just seems to be the all-purpose envoy, was in Russia while this was happening. He was part of the chat. Now, his phone, assuming he was using his phone was in Russia.
Yeah.
So it was super vulnerable to being hacked by Russians at that point in time.
Yes.
Because he's been using a Wi-Fi connection in Russia.
Yes.
Right? And so it was so likely that if they were trying to hack into his phone, they would have got access to anything that Witkoff was a part of, including this conversation or anything else. So that's one. But two, according to NPR, a Defense Department email went out that week, that exact week, warning everyone in the Defense Department that a vulnerability had just been detected in, guess which app? The Signal messaging app. Quote, Russian professional hacking groups are employing the linked devices features to spy on encrypted conversations, that the email said, and Russian hacking groups were targeting Signal Messenger to spy on persons of interest like Witkoff. That was a Department of Defense email that went out that week. And Hegseth, the head of the Department of Defense, is sharing war plans on that app that week. So there's your problem.
To be fair, he might not have seen it. Might have been sent out sometime after lunch. So Signal is a problem for all kinds of reasons. Now, there have been defences made. I even saw this morning some White House official protesting, but Signal comes pre-installed on government-issued laptops and phones.
Okay.
Now, it does actually have legitimate uses, and a lot of people have been talking about this over the last 72 hours, saying, yes, we did use Signal when we worked in the government. The way that we used it was to send a message, usually in some sort of coded form, saying, check your high-side communication, you've got a message there.
Yeah.
Right? So, yes, people aren't always, because of the nature of this high-side communication, people aren't always in it. They aren't always on it. They have to be basically paged to say, check your inbox.
And you can have unofficial communications.
Yes.
Like, if you're in the government, you can do lunch orders on some app or whatever. It's fine.
Yeah.
Like you're just not supposed to have official conduct official business on Signal. That's all.
So the fact that it's on government devices, right, that doesn't mean so you can use it for anything.
Yeah.
But the kind of defense that has been emerging, I mean, it's very incoherent, but this defense of, oh, yeah, those attack plans, well, that's okay because that wasn't classified information. Oh, yeah, Signal, there's no problem with that. The picture, once again, the picture that is emerging is we don't really give a shit about this security stuff. Now, what kind of message is that sending to people who are actually serving in the United States military? Right? Everything that you were doing that you assumed was protected by these systems that are supposed to be guaranteeing secrecy, we don't really care about them. Those are not as important as preventing embarrassment to the Trump administration.
I'll tell you the message it's sending. The message it's sending is you troops out there, just don't fuck up because as long as you have a successful mission, it doesn't matter what we do.
That's right.
But if you fuck up, then we get into trouble.
Exactly.
Because if something had gone wrong in that mission, then this would be an even bigger story.
It would have been a problem. And Trump has been saying, oh, well, nothing went wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Look, nothing went wrong as a result of Hillary Clinton's private email server either, apart from her election campaign.
Whoa, man, you've opened up a can of worms by bringing that up.
Yeah.
Man, do I have some clips of Pete Hegseth talking about Hillary Clinton and being a little bit hypocritical.
Okay.
How damaging is it to your ability to recruit or build allies with others when they are worried that our leaders may be exposing them because of their gross negligence or their recklessness in handling information?
By the way, the person that he's yelling that at, that's not anybody who had anything to do with national security. That was Sheriff David Clark of Milwaukee.
It was.
Their favourite law enforcement officer. Whatever happened to him? He just vanished.
You have a very, very short shelf life in MAGA world. That was number one, but I got more.
Okay.
The people we rely on to do dangerous and difficult thing for us rely on one thing from us, that we will not reveal their identity and not be reckless with what the dangerous things they're doing for us. That's the national security implications of a private server that's unsecured.
Thank you, Pete. And number three.
Pete, if this were a Republican divulging the secrets of our nation at the very highest level, that person would be in prison. There would be outrage across the board. But here, it's covered up. It's incredible.
No, the double standard is incredible. Imagine if it was, I don't know, Donald Trump, what the media would be doing to him right now, eviscerating him. Or imagine if it was a member of the military, which we've seen from General Cartwright and General Petraeus. They still go after these guys for a tiny, tiny fraction of what she willfully did and betrayed her country in doing so, supposedly for convenience, but actually so she could have a different set of standards and hide her conduct.
I can't believe she tried to hide her conduct, Dave. Imagine if she was a Republican. Absolutely nothing might have happened to her if she was a Republican. Okay, that's enough.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, this brings us to the just general impunity of all of this. I feel that even during the first Trump administration, Waltz would have been gone pretty quickly.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt.
Like, and certainly under any other administration.
He still might go.
Yeah,
But I reckon if he goes, it's because of what we already said. The bit about him being mates with Geoffrey Goldberg would be the reason why he went.
Yeah. Not just because it's negligent, not just because it's gross dereliction of public service by someone who's very powerful, but because it's embarrassing. And you would imagine Trump would just throw him overboard.
You would.
Like, it could have been dealt with very, very quickly. Like, this was idiotic. It's this guy's fault. Out he goes. But this is not the way that it's done in the Trump administration.
And ironically, one of Trump's, I think, absolute spot-on criticisms of Joe Biden, I just 100% agree with, is Trump has, he often criticized Joe Biden for saying he never fired anyone. No matter how incompetent they were, no matter how many mistakes they made, no one ever got fired in the Biden administration. I think that's a fair call.
Yeah.
Like, there were people who deserved to be fired at times, and they never were fired. And now Trump's turning to Biden. He's not firing anyone.
Yeah.
Oh, he's firing all the ex-Democrats who were there when he came in. He's firing.
Yeah, and he's firing a lot of ordinary public servants who are just doing their jobs.
Yeah, but his own people. He refuses to fire his own people.
Yeah, so nobody's getting fired for this. The National Security Council is supposedly looking into it, which, I mean, I'm sure they actually will look into it. But what they're being directed to look into now is try to come up with some other story about how Geoffrey Goldberg got into the chat. So Mike Waltz is like, I'm going to get Elon Musk to look into this. I have no idea how he ended up in the chat. When the chat says Mike Waltz added you to the chat. Like, it is very clear how he got into it. Elon Musk doesn't need to look into this.
On that note, I've actually got the Elon Musk clip. Let's have a look at that. It's just that's really sort of desperate times when he's just going, "Oh, Elon, save me."
We're going to get to the bottom of it. I just talked to Elon on the way here. We've got the best technical minds looking at how this happened, but I can tell you for 100%, I don't know this guy. I know him by his horrible reputation, and he really is the bottom scum of journalists. And I know him in the sense that he hates the president, but I don't text him. He wasn't on my phone, and we're going to figure out how this happened.
So you don't. I think he's protesting way too much with the bottom scum of journalists thing.
Yeah.
Like, he's just trying so hard. But after you do get to the bottom of this, though, how Geoffrey Goldberg turned up in the chat, you should then find the real killers of O.J. Simpson's ex-wife. Because you're a great investigator. And the other clip I want to play of Mike denying a bit too much was there was a bit there where Trump at the cabinet meeting just threw to him and said, "So, Mike, tell us about Geoffrey Goldberg." There's just such a sense of from Trump of just, okay, monkey, dance.
Yeah.
And he worked so hard and it just wasn't effective.
There's a lot of journalists in this city who have made big names for themselves, making up lies about this president, whether it's the Russia hoax or making up lies about Gold Star families. And this one in particular, I've never met, don't know, never communicated with, and we are looking into and reviewing how the heck he got into this room. But I'll tell you what, the world owes President Trump a favor. Under Biden, global shipping was shut down. Pinprick attacks, months between them, our destroyers being fired upon dozens of times. President Trump took decisive action with his national security team.
Yeah, so it's like he tries it. He tries to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know the guy, but he thought, no. The way to get out of this is just to suck up to Trump.
Yeah.
Didn't work.
It really, really didn't work. But he's saying that this journalist is printing lies. They're talking about it. It's a hoax. It's not. Everybody can see it's not lies and it's not a hoax. No one is actually disputing the authenticity of what Geoffrey Goldberg put out there.
It was confirmed by Brian Hughes.
It was confirmed by Brian Hughes. Not even they
National
are actually
Security guy.
saying, that thing that is there was never said. They're not. They're saying, that's not a war plan.
Yeah.
That the planes will bomb the target at 4:45. That's not a war plan, no. They're just denying something that is obviously there.
Can I tell you my favourite quote
Yes.
about Mike Waltz from someone in the administration?
Yeah.
Which was is in Politico. Everyone in the White House can agree on one thing. Mike Waltz is a fucking idiot. That was my favourite quote. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't even understand the strategy of, let's not have a sacrificial goat. Let's just double down on this all the way. It's very hard to do when you can't even dispute the authenticity of what's there.
Yeah, no, this is a tough one to spin. I felt a bit sorry for them.
I don't feel sorry for them at all.
Did you see the massive mistake effort with Maria Salazar?
No, I didn't.
She made a mistake of her own, which was she was trying to run with a line. This was all just a mistake. Let's move on. And it actually goes to what you were saying before about no investigations.
Yes, yeah.
Like there's no Inspector General report from the Pentagon or anything like that. There's no congressional investigation. But she was saying that's fine because it's just a mistake. Let's move on. The problem is she wanted to run that line in an 11-minute interview with that Boris guy on CNN.
Oh.
That guy's dogged, right?
Yes, yeah.
And he would happily just ask you the same question for 11 straight minutes, which he did. And
he's so dogged we don't even need to know his surname.
No, just imagine him as Boris Dogged.
Yeah, Boris Dogged.
We got to the 6-minute mark, and she was really sick of it. And the explosion was quite funny. Here, have a look at this.
Congresswoman. In this case, thank God Almighty that the operation was highly successful and we were able to go after the Houthis, who happen to be pretty bad people because they're being backed by even worse people, which are the Iranians. So why don't we concentrate on that? We recognize that it was a mistake. I'm sure that they know it was a mistake. They're going to take further precautions next time. Why don't we talk about immigration?
We will. Is that sufficient accountability to you to recognize that someone made a mistake and moving on? Because I don't see that same standard being held
Boris,
when other people have made.
I gave you the soundbite already. I just told you.
Congresswoman, respectfully, I'm after a specific answer.
Okay.
And that is whether you think
I
that
just gave it
sufficient
to you.
accountability is forgiving someone when they make one mistake, as you put it. Is that sufficient? Is that the standard that you hold these cabinet members to?
I'm telling you that they recognize what happened. I'm sure they're going to take measures for next time this not to happen. These are patriots. They're just starting in the job. These are people that know what they're doing.
So she's really struck. The mistake thing just is like she gets to the point there where she's saying, give them a break because they just started the job, but you can trust them because they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's just not working.
No, it is ridiculous. And by the way, on the mistake point, obviously adding Geoffrey Goldberg was a mistake.
Yeah.
A hilarious one.
That was a big mistake.
But using Signal for that discussion, that wasn't a mistake in terms of a one-off error of judgment.
Absolutely. Actually, can I now jump in to what the laws?
Yes.
Because I
Talk about the
flag
laws.
this. Okay,
Yeah.
so there are two main sources of law here. They're the issues. Number one is the Pete Hegseth laws. These are the mishandling defence information laws, right? You've got the Espionage Act, gross negligence in mishandling national defence information. I'll give you the quote. Whoever been entrusted with or having lawful possession or control of any document, writing, code book, signal book, sketch, photograph, photographic, negative, blueprint, plan, map, model, plan, map, model, instrument, appliance, note, or information relating to the national defence. That's your issue. Through gross negligence, permits the same to be removed from its proper place of custody or delivered to anyone in violation of his trust or to be lost, stolen, abstracted, or destroyed shall be fined, etc.
They could make the argument that this had nothing to do with the defence of the United States.
I suppose.
They could.
They could try that.
They could.
So, gross negligence,
Yeah.
check. Plans information, check. National defence, check. Delivered to anyone in violation of that trust, check. That seems pretty guilty.
Yeah.
In fact, just using the Signal app alone, I think makes that makes that a violation. Goldberg's a bonus. And they didn't have to be classified, just defence. The hard part is the mens rea for gross negligence. When I say mens rea, I mean the state of mind.
Yeah.
Because according to the Inspector General report into Hillary Clinton, the mens rea for gross negligence likely required a state of mind that was so gross as to almost suggest deliberate intention, criminally reckless, or something that falls just short of being willful. They could argue maybe it hasn't got quite to gross negligence. Maybe it should be garden variety negligence.
Yes.
I don't know. But then we get to the Mike Waltz one. So this is why before when you said, P. Hexet's the one that's most in trouble, I think Mike Waltz might be the one who's most in trouble.
Okay.
Because get a load of these. Waltz, as we said, he set some of the messages in Signal to disappear after 1 week and some after 4. It actually specifically says Mike Waltz set that. So the evidence is there, right?
Yeah.
Or his staffer. He might throw staffer overboard.
Yeah.
And of course, that's why they were on Signal, probably, so their communications could be disappeared. I do want to point out, it doesn't say all of those messages were supposed to disappear. It said some were after 1 week, some were after 4. So it's possible, because we only have the information we have, it's possible that the most classified ones weren't set to disappear.
Okay.
I doubt it. But I'll just give them that fig leaf.
Yeah.
Maybe. All right. Maybe for the official matters ones,
Yes.
the weren't set to disappear would be okay. But otherwise, Section 2071, destruction of government records. Whoever having the custody of any such record, proceeding, map, book, document, paper, or other thing, willfully and unlawfully conceals, removes, mutilates, obliterates, falsifies, or destroys the same, guilty. Section 641, public property or records. Whoever embezzles, steals, purloins, or knowingly converts to his use or the use of another, or without authority sells, conveys, or disposes of any record, voucher, money, or thing of value of the United States or any other department or agency, or any property made or being made under contract for the United States or any department or agency thereof, guilty. Section 1361, depredation against government property. Whoever willfully injures or commits any depredation against any property of the United States or any department or agency thereof, or any property which has been or been manufactured or constructed for the United States or any department or agency thereof, or attempts to commit any of the foregoing offences. Once again, if they're on official business, that's for the United States, guilty. So that's 3 laws that I think Mike Waltz, without the he doesn't get the fig leaf that I gave him before.
Yep.
Guilty times 3. So the fact there isn't even the prospect of a congressional investigation or a Pentagon Inspector General investigation or a special counsel for that matter.
Yeah.
When it's so likely that serious laws were broken, that's kind of amazing.
This was, the ABC asked me, because I was talking about all the laws that were broken. So is anyone going to end up in jail for this?
Nope.
Like, that would involve the Department of Justice getting involved. That would involve Pam Bondi saying, we need to have an investigation that's going to severely embarrass the Trump administration. So, no. Somebody might lose their job over this. It might be Mike Waltz. It might well be a staffer of his. But no, nobody is going to have any serious repercussions.
2 more thoughts before I think I'm done, and I have the sense that you're pretty done as well.
Yes.
Was it revealing just how little Trump knew about this when he was asked? Now, normally I would say when Trump plays dumb like I'm about to play you.
Yes.
He's usually lying to throw everyone else under the bus. But in this case, it feels like Trump genuinely has no idea what's going on. Have a look.
Your reaction to the story in The Atlantic that said that some of your top cabinet officials and aides had been discussing very sensitive material through Signal and included an Atlantic reporter for that. What is your response to that?
I don't know anything about it. I'm not a big fan of The Atlantic. To me, it's a magazine that's going out of business. I think it's not much of a magazine, but I know nothing about it. You're saying that they had what?
They were using Signal to coordinate on sensitive materials and
Having to do with what? Having to do with what? What were they talking about?
With the Houthis.
The Houthis? You mean the attack on the Houthis? Right. Well, it couldn't have been very effective because the attack was very effective. I can tell you that. I don't know anything about it. You're telling me about it for the first time.
Okay, I believe him.
Yeah, that was my response too. Yeah. I think he had no idea.
And that was hours and hours after the White House knew about this story.
Yeah.
So if that's the case and Trump hadn't even been told about that story at that point in time, it suggests his press shop is super dysfunctional.
Yes, yeah. I mean, obviously none of those 18 people were going to broach the topic. Yes. But you would have thought, some of his own staff might have been aware of it. Because this dominated media.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely dominated media for hours and days.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I've got one other thought, and this one hasn't been covered quite so much.
Mm-hmm.
What just happened just now was America restarted military combat operations against the Houthis, right?
Yes.
That's what just happened.
Yep.
They'd stopped them and now they restart them. You might not be aware of this because of how dysfunctional Congress is these days, but that's Congress's job.
Yes.
I know Congress hasn't done that job for a long time.
It has not.
But the idea is meant to be that Congress makes these kinds of decisions of war, unless there's an emergency, in which case the president can do it for a few months while Congress debates and then gives their approval. Now, it hasn't worked like that for decades, but usually there's a fig leaf. Usually the president will say, well, this was an emergency. We had to act quickly and Congress give them their rubber stamp eventually, and that's just how it's evolved in the last few decades. That's fine, all right? But this is the first time in history that you can say, we know for a fact that's not true. Because we can see them talking about whether they should go to war or not.
Yeah.
We can see the argument in front of us. So we know there's proof. There is definitive proof this is not an emergency.
Yes.
Not only because there's clearly no emergency, but there are people on the chat saying explicitly, Joe Kent said, there is nothing time-sensitive driving the timeline. We'll have the exact same options in a month. That's written there. Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, says, quote, waiting a few weeks or a month does not fundamentally change the calculus. They're explicitly admitting on a chat that they could wait for Congress to make up its mind if they wanted to. There's no way you can get around that. The chat is a confession to breaching the Constitution in a way we have never seen ever in history. And no one gives a shit.
Yeah.
Like, it's actually quite stark. In fact, most people haven't even noticed that. They are admitting to a breach of the Constitution in this chat.
Yes.
In the end, the only reason they went to war, we didn't even mention this, was because Steve Miller said, quote, as I heard it, the president was clear, green light. That's what, they were arguing amongst themselves, and he said that. As I heard it, the president was clear, green light. And they went, okay, agreed, let's go, let's do it. Go time.
And then it was after that he said, but we've got to tell the Egyptians and the Europeans we expect remuneration.
Yeah. So the point is, it wasn't even Trump's directions that sent them to war. It was Steve Miller's hazy memory of Trump's directions that sent them to war. He shouldn't have even been on the chat. He's a domestic policy advisor. He's only one step above Geoffrey Goldberg. He shouldn't have been anywhere near there. And yet he was the one that sent them to war through his hazy memory. This is actually the biggest scandal, in my view, in this whole saga. This is actually the thing that's the least competent, and people are just completely sleeping on it. And so I just wanted to raise that because that is a shocker. I should say, by the way, I mean, I'm getting loud here because whenever I talk about libertarian things, I get loud. But the truth is that I can't get myself worked up about this story, and I'll tell you why.
Why?
Because I'm grateful for this story.
Yes.
And the reason I'm grateful is because we have spent the last 2 weeks wading through the mud of the most disgusting, authoritarian, dystopian bullshit.
Yes.
Like malign, like what the hell is happening to this country and the world kind of shit. And this is garden variety incompetence. We're back to normal politics now. This is back to just stupid political figures who have no idea what they're doing. They just fuck up in a Keystone Cops kind of a way. That's delightful. This is a holiday for me, this story.
Yeah.
So while people are getting worked up, I'm not worked up. I'm just thinking, oh, thank God we're not talking about the next topic we're going to talk about, which is El Salvador and shit like that again. So I'm actually not worked up about it. But there are lots of laws broken, and they did just admit to breaching the Constitution. So we should note that.
Yes. And, I mean, I would say in the end, if the Trump administration is brought down, it's not going to be because of outrage about the attacks on the Constitution or authoritarianism. It's going to be because of outrage about incompetence.
And bad emoticons.
Yes. I mean, especially if the economy goes down the toilet.
Yes.
If the economy goes down the toilet, people are going to see very clear links between this kind of idiocy and the way that the economy is being willfully destroyed. I think that the trust implications of this go far beyond national security. Because national security is where you're supposed to have the highest levels of care and secrecy because it's people's lives at stake. So how are they treating every other issue? And when they get found out, when this incompetence gets found out, when the response is to double down on saying that nothing was wrong, how is anybody supposed to trust the United States government?
Well, there's a lot of reasons.
Yeah, when I say how is anybody supposed to trust the United States government, I'm not just talking about other countries. Okay, I'm not just talking about the obvious problems with alliances. We didn't even go into the all caps pathetic description of European countries. I'm not just talking about that. I'm not just talking about the intelligence sharing implications. I'm talking about business. Okay? Business has to have dealings with the United States government. And it's been said in the abstract a few times, but this is going to get a little bit more urgent, that business likes stability, right? Business likes to have stable environments. Now, when that was put to Trump recently in the context of the damage that his tariffs could do, he said, well, the globalists have been taking advantage of us for far too long. Look, fair enough. But what they're going to end up risking is capital flight. Now, the US is not as vulnerable to capital flight as a lot of other places because so many companies, so many major global companies are from the US, headquartered in the US, have most of their operations in the US. Fair enough. Many of them can't go anywhere. And there are many companies that are genuinely dependent on the kind of business that they do with the US government. But it is going to become an issue that no one is going to be able to trust this government to give reliable information. Nobody's going to be able to trust this government to stick to an agreement. Nobody is going to be able to trust this government to stick to a course of action. That is the sort of thing that will make business, that will make capital very unwilling to spend, very unwilling to invest. And even if they can't flee the country, they have other ways of hurting the country, which is it's just not investing.
Yeah,
it's just holding on and waiting. That is a way of that can be as bad as capital flight.
Yeah, this is the classic scenario when you have uncertainty, you have recession.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is what Marxists call the structural dependence of the state on capital.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's why Dr. Dave is in the building.
Yes.
Okay, Dave. Well, I spent over an hour talking about the Alien Enemies Act with Melina in PEP 202. I know you got a few things to say about it, so why don't you say whatever you need to say, and then I'll give some updates because I've got more.
Look, I would just like to make I think I'll let you deal with the update, but I just want to make a general point about this and also the other thing that we're going to talk about, which is the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952.
Yeah.
Part of the purpose of invoking both of these pieces of legislation is to put as much of this as possible into the domain of foreign policy.
Yes.
Now, I would argue that immigration is inherently a foreign policy issue, but both of this makes it a lot more directly about foreign policy by making it about the relationships between countries and also about the US foreign policy posture. With the Alien Enemies Act, Donald Trump is effectively saying that Venezuela is waging a proxy war against the United States through the Tren de Aragua gang.
Yes.
So what was said in the proclamation was Tren de Aragua is a hybrid criminal state that is invading the United States.
Yes.
I actually like the term hybrid criminal state because that often describes what organised crime is.
Yeah.
Organised crime is often a kind of pseudo-state structure where no state exists.
And it'd be a good name for a metal band as well.
Actually kind of performs state functions. But I don't think that they've been reading Diego Gambetta's excellent books on organised crime, which is where I got that idea from. I think that what they're doing is they're saying this is a parastate. This is effectively a parastate organisation or a proxy state organisation that is waging war. Now, it was reported by the New York Times that US intelligence agencies did not agree with this assessment.
That's right.
They didn't give a full-throated rejection of it, but they said they were moderately confident that the Tren de Aragua was not actually invading the United States at the direction of the Venezuelan government. I think, though, the FBI had a slightly different take on that.
They did. They were using evidence that they cited evidence that the other intelligence agencies just rejected.
Right.
And let's recall, this is under Trump.
Yes, yeah.
So the FBI has been run by Kash Patel.
Yes.
A man who wrote a children's book.
Yes.
About January 6th, where he was the hero and saved the day and saved King Trump.
Mm.
So I wouldn't necessarily trust his judgment about evidence.
Yes.
But yes.
Now, jumping around a bit, but I'm trying to make a broad point
Yeah, that's
here.
fine.
With the 1952 Immigration and Nationality Act, that makes anybody deportable if the Secretary of State has reasonable grounds to believe that their presence in the United States is prejudicial to US foreign policy.
It's pretty good. Let me give you the exact quote.
Yeah.
That was close.
Yeah.
An alien whose presence or activities in the United States, the Secretary of State has reasonable ground to believe would have potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the United States.
Yes. Now, okay. Yeah. So historically, that didn't mean a protester who disagrees with US foreign policy.
No.
That meant somebody whose presence there was actively damaging the ability of the US to conduct relations with other countries. The example that's always cited was the former Mexican consul general who was apprehended in the United States with $26,000 worth of false currency, I think it was. And who protested against his deportation to Mexico. There was some legal issue. They invoked that act then. They said, if we don't deport you to Mexico, Mexico's not going to cooperate with us on anything.
Yes.
Right? That's actually an example of where the presence in the country damages foreign policy.
Yeah.
Right. But, okay. So I think that both of these, it's bullshit. But there's a very clear reason why they are using it. When Marco Rubio was interviewed about the deportation flights with alleged Venezuelan gang members that had left the United States despite a judge ordering them not to leave the United States and had gone to El Salvador, Rubio said in an interview with, I think it was Hugh Hewitt, he said that arrangement with El Salvador is a foreign policy matter and we can't have the judges running foreign policy.
Yes.
And this, by the way, has been widely cited as this is the first time that they're really actually effectively defying a judgment. Okay. So a couple of things going on here. One is, I don't like it, but I can't deny it. Mass deportation is probably Trump's most popular policy right now.
By a mile.
Yes. So therefore, if you are going to pick fights with the judiciary, it makes political sense to do it on an issue where you've got public opinion on your side, even if the law is not.
Yep.
But the second thing is, and I think this might actually be more consequential in the long term, Congress and the courts defer more to the executive on foreign policy than any other issue.
True.
Now, for Congress, this really goes back to the 1930s when Congress gave the president a lot of authority to adjust tariffs. That was really strengthened in 1962 when the president gained the authority to impose tariffs if imports posed a national security threat. Sound familiar? Okay. And then, what they're currently invoking is the 1977 International Economic Emergency Powers Act to justify the tariffs on Mexico and Canada. Now, that may all seem completely absurd, but the fact is Congress just gave its power away on that. And as you've already pointed out, it's effectively given away its power on war as well.
Yep.
It's Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution gives Congress the power to declare war, but the last time that the US declared war was 1941, despite the fact that it's been at war almost every year since then.
Yes.
Right? These days, the president initiates military action, takes it, Congress does something a little bit later about it. Okay, so Congress has just given that away. And anything that is national security in particular, the response of most members of Congress is we do not want to be seen standing in the way of the president on national security. There's also usually an assumption, which is sometimes correct, that the president has better information and better intelligence available, right? So unless something goes very, very badly wrong, Congress doesn't want to be seen opposing the president. Okay, that's Congress. But you might ask, well, Congress, there's obvious political pressure for them to defer to the executive on foreign policy. But what about the courts? Marbury versus Madison established the right of judicial review back in 1798. The courts are supposed to independently review the constitutionality of things. What about foreign policy? And the answer to that is the courts are even more deferential to the executive on foreign policy, and that goes back even further. There was a court case in 1918, so during the First World War, where the Supreme Court wrote very sweepingly that foreign policy, or foreign relations, as they put it, is a political matter which is not subject to judicial review. Political questions, they're the domain of the executive, they're the domain of Congress, they are not the domain of the judiciary, therefore the judiciary doesn't rule on them. Now, that was a far more sweeping statement than has generally been accepted as jurisprudence. There actually have been times since then where the Supreme Court has ruled on foreign policy, but those cases are very rare. And in the cases where they have ruled, they have always supported the right of the president to make foreign policy, including against Congress, right? So that was the Carter versus Goldwater case in 1979, where a bunch of congressmen led by Barry Goldwater tried to sue Carter over China policy, saying that this was a betrayal of Taiwan. And the Supreme Court's ruling was that Congress can't really interfere with the president's right to make foreign policy. There are a few other relevant cases, but they're too convoluted to explain here. The point is the Supreme Court is not coming to save anybody when it comes to foreign policy, especially not this Supreme Court, which takes a very expansive view of executive power. So you can see what the Trump administration is actually trying to do here, right? Yes. If you're wondering why they're pushing so many boundaries on this so quickly and why they're invoking these acts which have been around for a long time but which don't get invoked that often, you can tell they are pushing everything as fast as they can to a confrontation in the Supreme Court, which they are confident that they will win. And what they are very much hoping for out of that is that when they invoke the 1798 law and the 1952 law, that the courts back off. That the Supreme Court says, yep, this is foreign policy. The courts have no role here. And what they might get out of that is the basically expanded ability to deport to places like El Salvador.
Yep.
Possibly the expanded ability to denaturalize people on foreign policy grounds.
Yep.
The ability to ignore court orders on things like movements of plane through foreign airspace. all of this by putting it under the banner of foreign policy and saying courts don't have the right to interfere on foreign policy. They are looking to use this to expand executive power.
I think that is really good analysis. Are you aware of the one time this 1952 law has been gone to court big time?
No.
There's one time.
Okay.
In 1996.
Right.
When it really got put to the test. And a district court judge took it down. But then it was appealed and they lost the appeal, but for different reasons.
Right.
So at this point in time, it's only been taken to court once.
Yep.
And it lost that case. This argument.
What was this case about?
I don't actually know.
Okay.
I don't actually know. I should have looked it up.
That's some homework for the Peppers.
Yeah. The case is Monsieur versus Renault.
Okay.
And the interesting thing about this case
is
the judge in that case is Donald Trump's sister.
What?
She took this law down as a district court judge in 1996. She said, the issue before the court is not whether the plaintiff has the right to remain in this country beyond the period for which he was lawfully admitted. Indeed, as a non-immigrant visitor, he only had a limited right to remain here, but the right to then go on his way to wherever he wished to go. The issue, rather, is whether an alien who is in this country legally can, merely because he is here, have his liberty restrained and be forcibly removed to a specific country in the unfettered discretion of the Secretary of State and without any meaningful opportunity to be heard. The answer is a ringing no. So as you can see, this is exactly the same facts we're talking about, here, even though I don't know what the story was.
Yeah.
And then she spelled it out. The range of circumstances that could warrant deportation under this provision is virtually boundless. The law grants the Secretary of State unrestrained power, authorising a heretofore unknown scope of executive enforcement power vis-a-vis the individual with utterly no standards provided to the Secretary of State or to the legal aliens subject to its provisions. It provides absolutely no notice to aliens as to what is required of them. The statute represents a breathtaking departure both from well-established legislative precedent, which commands deportation based on adjudications of defined impermissible conduct by the alien in the United States, and from well-established precedent with respect to extradition, which commands extradition based on adjudications of probable cause to believe that the alien has engaged in defined impermissible conduct elsewhere. As I said, the appeals court reversed her decision, but for different reasons.
Yeah.
So that's the only time it's been in court.
Yeah.
So until now.
Interesting.
So it will be interesting.
Yes.
Do you want me to roll on from here?
You go.
Okay.
From here,
All right. Now,
yes.
just jump in any time you want. These are just updates. I'm not going to redo old ground. What's happened since we last talked about this a week ago? The roundups, they've continued.
I'm proud to say in the past 48 hours, ICE, along with our local partners and our other fellow federal agencies, have arrested more than 68 TDA gang members, terrorists, in the United States. To date, we've arrested 394 of these terrorists.
I don't know what percentage of that large number there is just the people they flew to El Salvador, by the way. But the fact is the roundups have continued.
Yeah.
But the deportations have stopped. Tom Homan has chilled out from his whole I don't care what the courts say mode that we talked about last week. Now he says he's going to let the legal battle play out before using the Alien Enemies Act for more deportation flights. Meanwhile, Boasberg is still trying to get any info out of anyone in the government about whether they broke his court order. Who was on the plane? When did the planes leave? Where were the planes when they heard the court order? He wants anything. He's getting nothing. The government's been increasingly unwilling to give him any of that, to the point that Pam Bondi has now asserted state secrets privilege, claiming, quote, disclosure would pose reasonable danger to national security and foreign affairs.
Oh, now they're big on state secrecy.
Yes, they are.
Okay.
How does that work, you might wonder? Well, she tells us the government's been working with a foreign state, presumably El Salvador, and, quote, Disclosure of the information requested by the court could cause the foreign state's government to face internal or international pressure, making that foreign state and other foreign states less likely to work cooperatively with the United States in the future, both within and without the removal context. The end result would be to erode the credibility of the United States' assurances that information will be maintained in confidence.
Imagine that.
And thereby impede the ability of the United States to secure the cooperation of foreign authorities and crew corporations. This was literally on the same day as the story came out about Signal. She's saying this shit.
That is incredible.
But don't worry, because Bondi said that the court didn't need that info anyway. Get a load of this for arrogance. The court has all the facts it needs to address the compliance issues before it. Further intrusions on the executive branch would present dangerous and wholly unwarranted separation of powers harms with respect to diplomatic and national security concerns that the court lacks competence to address. No more information is needed to resolve any legal issue in this case, whether the planes carried one TDA terrorist or 1,000, or whether the planes made one stop or 10, simply has no bearing on any relevant legal issue. The need for additional information here is not merely dubious or trivial, it's non-existent. The executive branch violated no valid order through its actions, and the court has all it needs to evaluate compliance. Accordingly, the court's factual inquiry should end, she said. So not only can the government do what it likes with these people without any due process, but it's a grave violation of propriety to even ask them what they're doing.
That's right.
And
they're all terrorists.
They're all terrorists.
Yeah.
Strangely, they don't mind giving some of that detail when they're boasting their propaganda videos.
Yes.
Like, in fact, in that one that we played last week from El Salvador, you actually saw the actual tail number on the plane. It was just so slapdash. Anyway, Boasberg extended the injunction anyway.
Yep.
He said the ACLU is likely to succeed in arguing that individuals the government's claimed were members of Trendewargua were entitled to individualised hearings to determine whether the act applies to them at all. Thank God. And he noted that they obviously suffer irreparable harm being sent to a brutal Salvadoran prison. Boasberg also noted even if the government was free to deport these people, they may not be free to send them to a Salvadorian prison. Because he cited the Foreign Affairs Reform and Restructuring Act of 1998. It says, it shall be the policy of the United States not to expel any person to a country in which there are substantial grounds for believing the person would be in danger of being subjected to torture. Sounds relevant.
Yeah, now, maybe the Trump administration could claim, well, we don't have any grounds to believe that they'll be tortured in a Salvadorian prison, except for the fact that Trump has been bragging about how bad Salvadorian prisons are.
That will certainly hold up in court. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the appeal of Judge Boasberg's ruling has already begun. But it's not going so well for the government so far. This is what have you heard this?
No, I haven't heard this.
This is what Judge Pat Millett on the appeals court had to say.
There were plane loads of people. I mean, it's a class action. There were plane loads of people. There were no procedures in place to notify people. Nazis got better treatment under the Alien Enemy Act than has happened here, where the proclamation required the promulgation of regulations, and they had hearing boards before people were removed. And yet here there's nothing in there about hearing boards. There's no regulations, and nothing was adopted by the agency officials that were administering this. People weren't given notice. They weren't told where they were going.
She's actually right. That's not Godwin's law. The Nazis in World War II literally received more due process than these people did.
Yes.
Literally.
Yeah.
And Millett has been riding the government lawyers quite hard, pushing them into some very unfortunate positions, to the point where the Department of Justice attorney now acknowledges that accused TDA members are entitled to judicial review on the question of whether they're actually TDA members. They're entitled to that now.
Yes.
But they refuse to concede that the aliens are entitled to notice that the administration deems them as deportable. So if you think about that, they have the right to due process. They can file a claim to fight the charge, but they don't need to know that the charge exists.
Wow.
So when they're on the plane, you go, well, too late. You should have filed before when you had no idea that we were going to kidnap you and put you on the plane. You should have known it was coming. So that's defies the whole process of due process,
Yes.
I would have thought. Anyway, so that's their appeal, which they're going to lose. And then it's going to go to the Supreme Court. So we'll see what happens there. That might be just a few months away. That might be really close.
I mean, I feel that this is a basic point, but it's one worth making.
Yep.
Due process is one of the most important rights that exists in any country.
Totally.
And once you get rid of due process for anyone, then it can be gotten rid of for anyone else.
That's absolutely true.
We are already seeing the Trump administration extending this language of terrorism, and terrorists have no rights, to things like people vandalizing Teslas.
Yep.
So I know a lot of people feel very cautious and burnt about defending the rights of alleged Venezuelan gang members. But if you give up on due process for them, you are at some point giving up on due process for yourself. Also, if you allow this to happen, then you're allowing the Trump administration to make threatening foreigners the central focus of American politics. And as long as Trump can make threatening foreigners the central focus of American politics, then he can find political or legal support to do whatever he wants. So people actually have to oppose this.
I'm going to roll with where you're going there, Dave. I'm going to skip ahead I'll come back, but I'll skip ahead to my slippery slope section.
Yes.
Which is, I see two slippery slopes already in view. One, if this is a war, then what other war powers can the Trump administration claim? Okay, if this is a legitimate war, there's lots of war powers out there. It doesn't end with this one.
Yes.
The New York Times has reported that the Justice Department now believes that they don't need a warrant to enter a home or premises to search for people believed to be members of Trendaragua because it's a war. And they're invading America, and there's a precedent of suspending the Fourth Amendment during wars. I believe they haven't acted on that yet, so we'll see what happens, but they're preparing for it, and that is the next step. If they're allowed to bite this off, that's the next step. The other slippery slope that I can already see is this only going to apply to migrants? How about domestic terrorists like the Tesla people?
Yes.
Allow me to read a tweet from Trump this week along the lines of what you were just saying, Dave. I look forward to watching the sick terrorist thugs get 20-year jail sentences for what they're doing to Elon Musk and Tesla. Perhaps they could serve them in the prisons of El Salvador, which have become so recently famous for such lovely conditions, says Trump.
Yes.
He might not mean it. He might just be kidding around. Maybe the courts won't let that happen. Maybe they will. Are you comfortable with the president making threats like that and people not being 100% sure that he can't act on them?
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable with that.
And so if the if the plans for things like stripping people of birthright citizenship go through, if denaturalization on the grounds that people are Hamas supporters becomes a thing, because this government's definition of Hamas supporter is, to put it mildly, incredibly broad.
Yes.
The number of people who could be subject to deportation because they're not citizens or no longer citizens is just going to get bigger and bigger.
And deportation to indefinite stays in a Salvadorian prison.
Yes.
Because that's not just deportation. Deportation is drop them off in a country and just leave them alone.
Yes. Yeah.
Like this is deportation to imprisonment, potentially indefinite imprisonment, with no ability to get out.
Yes, yeah, because Bukele has said it's minimum of a year and then it can be renewed.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Bukele's entire legitimacy as president of El Salvador depends on the toughness of his prisons.
Yeah.
So, like, it's turning El Salvador's main industry into housing political opponents of the Trump administration. That is something that could definitely happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting back to where I was talking before, another thing that's happened is the attempt to marginalise Judge Boasberg.
Mm-hmm.
We got correspondence about this, actually, from Nubula. I'm not so sure that the history between Boasberg and Kavanagh means we should automatically assume that they are BFFs, because they used to be roomies.
Ah.
Did you not know that?
I did not know that.
They're old mates. They were college mates, and they continue to be mates.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't see any reason they couldn't be on opposite ends of the ideological spectrum. I feel like in times past, people didn't see eye to eye politically, would be more likely to interact and socialise with one another than they seem to nowadays. Boasberg's got a bipartisan history. He was first appointed to the DC Superior Court by George W. Bush in 2002.
Yeah.
He was then appointed to the federal bench by Obama in 2011.
Yes.
He was then appointed in 2014 by Chief Justice John Roberts to be the U.S. Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court for a 7-year term. Also, while he has some lefty, well, it's not even lefty, some rulings Democrats would approve of.
Yes.
Like he was lenient to the FBI guy who had admitted to doctoring an email that the Justice Department used against Carter Page during the Russiagate saga. I didn't like that, by the way. I didn't agree with his ruling. He gave that FBI guy, who I may emphasize, deliberately doctored an email to fake evidence against someone. He gave him probation because he felt that guy had been through enough already. I disagree with that. But he also ruled against Hillary Clinton in her email case.
Yep.
He ruled for Trump in his tax return case.
Yes.
So he's not like a predictable partisan judge.
No.
Who are these people that have been sent to...
Can I just say, before you get into this,
Yeah.
I agree with the correspondence, though, that it is completely spurious logic to think that people must love each other because they've been roommates.
Yeah.
The opposite could well be true.
Dave is speaking from experience, I feel.
I've lived in a lot of share houses over the years. Many of the people that I live with are among my closest friends. You know who you are. But let's just say... not everyone.
I would add in a comment, but my roommate's a pepper.
Oh, okay.
I think you kind of just did, like even by not doing so. Sorry to, if you want to stay at my place for a while, Lockie, you have to get thrown out. You're welcome to. You can use a granny flat. Okay, so who are these people? We talked a little bit last week about some of these people. But from leave the law aside, from a moral point of view, you want them to at least be bad dudes, ideally. According to Carolyn Levitt, they definitely are bad dudes.
These are heinous monsters, rapists, murderers, kidnappers, sexual assaulters, predators who have no right to be in this country, and they must be held accountable.
The Heinous Monsters are another one of my favourite metal bands. There's so many great metal bands today. Yeah, other DOJ officials have described them as the worst of the worst. So, obviously, do Democrats want to be out there on the limb defending these people?
Yeah.
Are they criminals or not? Well, I couldn't help noticing that in court, under oath, this is what the government said about their crimes in full. I'm going to read you in full what they said about their crimes. I'm trying to sell how bad these guys were. A review of ICE databases reveals that numerous individuals removed under the AEA, Alien Enemies Act, have arrests and convictions in the United States for dangerous offences, including an individual alleged to have committed murder, an individual with pending state charges for aggravated assault with weapon and who was identified by state authorities related to an armed home invasion and kidnapping, an individual with state arrest for harassment, an indecent assault where he entered the room of a 14-year-old victim, tried to lift her skirt, grabbed her thigh and rubbed his penis on her, an individual who was arrested for fourth-degree grand larceny and resisting arrest who was encountered in a home with other gang members, 3 automatic rifles, 2 handguns and an extended magazine. So that's all the same sentence. An individual convicted of conspiracy to harbour aliens involving his role in a stash house, including his job of taking and restricting access to the victim's cell phones, where officers and agents located 16 individuals in the stash house, including a pregnant female and a 15-year-old unaccompanied child. An individual arrested for a misdemeanor sex offence and felony assault. An individual with a state arrest for second-degree assault, intent to cause injury to weapon instrument. An individual arrested for second-degree assault with intent to cause serious serious physical injury in a manner injure child less than 17, for which there is an order of protection in the case. An individual arrested at a TDA-run brothel and charged with evading arrest, promoting prostitution, possession of fentanyl, and possession of marijuana. An individual arrested for property damage, assault, and simple assault, as well numerous other theft and larceny related offences. Now, I read that in full, in all its glory. I censored nothing. Okay, I didn't make it easy for me. I gave you everything they've got with both barrels. I'll tell you how I interpret that. Out of 263 people, there is one murder suspect.
Yes.
There are 4 assault suspects. There are 2 sexual assault suspects. There are 2 kidnapping suspects. And there's 1 larceny suspect.
And 1 possession of marijuana.
Yeah, I just ignored them. Even if every one of them was legit, and we don't know that.
Yes, yeah.
These are allegations because they're all charges, not convictions. That's 10 people out of 261. Who are the rest of them? Now, you might go, well, maybe the rest of them are murderers. No, they would have mentioned it.
Yeah, they really would have.
The fact they said, oh, there's one.
Yeah.
There's one that is, sorry, at least one that's suspected of murder. You go, okay, so you got 1 suspected murderer.
Yeah.
Right. Allow me to quote the government again in court under oath about the rest of them. While it is true that many of the TDA members removed under the AEA do not have criminal records in the United States, that's because they've only been in the United States for a short period of time. So even they admit that these people don't have criminal records.
Oh, my God.
Now, to be fair to the government, I try and be fair, Tom Homan has a response to this exact argument. So let's play it.
I've noticed in the media this week, a lot of them don't have criminal histories. Well, a lot of gang members don't have criminal histories. Just like a lot of terrorists in this world, they're not in any terrorist database, right? We only know the information what's in databases based on, for instance, most terrorists we arrest that are identified by the U.S. government are later identified through a Title III investigation or through an undercover operation. They're not in any terrorist screening database. We know that. A lot of gang members, I started as a cop in 1984. Many gang members don't have a criminal history. So we have a count on social media. We have a count on surveillance techniques. We have a count on sworn statements from other gang members. We have a count on, wiretaps and Title IIIs. Everything involved with criminal investigations come into play. So just because someone hasn't been arrested and charged with a crime yet, doesn't mean they're a member of a gang.
My God, I don't think I've ever heard anyone omit so many consonants.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's the height of hypocrisy for me to say this, but dude, take the marbles out of your mouth. He's hard to understand.
Yeah.
But look, to his point, I agree. Not having a criminal record does not mean that you're not a member of a gang.
No, that's true.
But it doesn't mean that you are a member of a gang either. That's why you need due process.
Yes. And it did say the terrorists were discovered through Title III investigations. Yeah. Key word there is investigation.
Yes.
There's not actually a suggestion there's been an investigation.
Well, let's see how Tom Homan reacts to that suggestion.
Okay.
What we've heard from lawyers representing some of these people is that they deny that they're members of this gang. Or either, Tren de Aragua or MS-13. Do they get a chance to prove that before you take them out of the country and put them into a notorious prison in a country that they're not even from? I mean, do they have any due process at all?
Look, due process. Where was Lake and Ronnie's due process? Where were all these young women that were killed and raped by members of TDA? Where was their due process?
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So because some women have been cruelly raped and murdered, therefore you can punish random people who may have done nothing. That's the logic we just heard there. Look, the truth is, since the government's giving us no information on these cases, we can't know much more.
No.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
But every now and then some info gets out, Dave. Case study, the soccer player. Have you heard about this guy?
No, I have not.
His lawyer's been doing the rounds. The lawyer of Jose Reyes Barrios, professional soccer player from Venezuela. He marched in 2 anti-Maduro protests, according to his lawyer, and was then arrested in Venezuela and tortured with electrocution. That's why he fled. That's why he sought asylum in America. And he had a hearing for his asylum claim. They found he had probable cause of asylum, no surprise.
Mm-hmm.
He had a hearing for his full asylum claim scheduled in April. He's not going to be at that hearing because he was disappeared and kidnapped and sent to El Salvador. The government accused him of being a member of the Tren de Aragua gang. So what's their evidence? Well, according to his lawyer, they've got 2 pieces of evidence. 1, a tattoo on his arm of a crown on top of a soccer ball with a rosary and the word Dios, which is Spanish for God. Barrios said he chose that tattoo because it resembles the logo for Real Madrid, the Spanish soccer team. God. That's the first piece of evidence. The second piece of evidence was a social media post with a picture of Barrios making this gesture, the devil horns gesture, which I guess makes Gene Simmons from Kiss a TDA member. That's well done, Lockie. That's very good.
Was this just coming from someone who really hated the movie Dazed and Confused?
Maybe. And that was allegedly it. I mean, I keep on saying allegedly, his lawyers, because we don't have any official information. But that, as far as we know, that's it. Marios, by the way, had a police clearance from Venezuela indicating no criminal record, plus multiple employment letters, plus a declaration for the tattoo artist who gave him his tattoo saying it's not a terrorist tattoo.
My God.
And so that's one of these people who's now in prison. And then this week we learned a little bit more about a few more of them. I'm going to leave aside the people I mentioned last week because I mentioned a whole bunch last week of people who were arrested just because they had tattoos. A practice which, by the way, Incite Crime, they're a crime group who've been studying Tren de Aragua, have noted that tattoos are actually not part of Tren de Aragua's initiation process at all. So the whole tattoo thing might be suspect.
Yes.
But anyway, let's leave them aside.
They wouldn't be able to get into a Japanese bathhouse, though.
We might be able to get into Tren de Aragua, but not into the bathhouse.
Yeah.
It's very exclusive. Let's leave all that aside. We learnt this week that some people on the plane had signed voluntary departure orders and thought they were going back to Venezuela. Now, you might not make much of that, but just think about that for a second. They were prepared and happy to be deported by normal processes back to Venezuela, but the administration chose instead to send them without a trial to an El Salvador prison for an indefinite period of time, even though it was completely unnecessary. These people were happy to go. We also learned from some people on the plane, because this hasn't been covered much, there were people rejected from the El Salvador prison.
Really?
Yes. This hasn't gotten out much because the government is not giving out much information. But the ACLU got in touch with a few of these people because there are multiple of these people and got them to give sworn statements to the court. And we discovered that while Tom Homan would believe these people were very rigorously gathered together by officials who have been very clinical and careful, even though under the terms of the deal with El Salvador, they were only supposed to be men from Venezuela, America managed to fly 9 women out there to be in that prison who were just rejected. And what a sexist prison.
So they got to the prison and the prison's like, no, you're not coming in. We don't care where you go, but you're not coming in here. Wow.
And then they also flew out a Nicaraguan who was rejected as well. And given the reams of evidence that the government supposedly has against these people, something else that these eyewitnesses said was on the planes, they saw the guards try and force the detainees to sign forms confessing to being TDA members.
Wow.
That's what they saw. They saw the guards threatening them if they didn't sign the forms. That's forced confession shit. That's tin pot dictatorship.
That really is.
That is the kind of dark shit which I've been talking about for the last 2 weeks that genuinely worries me. And I'm sorry, that's how authoritarianism works. I keep on saying that. There could be 250 more of these dubious cases for all we know. We just don't know.
Yeah.
All locked in a hellhole for a year. But the most important, interesting part of this testimony from the people on the plane was they heard the guards on the plane talking about the court order.
Wow.
Quote, within a couple of minutes of takeoff, I heard 2 US government officials talking and they said there is an order saying we can't take off, but we already have. That was within a couple of minutes of takeoff, according to the eyewitnesses. They might be wrong. Their sense of time might be incorrect. If they're right, they weren't over international waters yet.
No.
Even if they were wrong and they were over international waters, they knew they could turn around they knew they were being ordered to turn around on the plane, and they chose not to. So that is all very interesting.
Yes.
Do you have anything to say before I say what's happening to the prisoners?
No.
Because we're learning this as well. Like you said, according to Bukele, they're there for at least a year, renewably, which is obviously much worse than would normally happen to a legal immigrant. But this is not just any prison. This prison has hundreds of deaths associated with it.
Yeah.
Instances of torture, environmental manipulation to prolonged sleep deprivation, lack of medical attention, various forms of cruel, degrading treatment. A number of these allegations I just read you came from the US State Department report in 2023, which catalogued gross overcrowding, inadequate sanitary conditions, insufficient food and water shortages, etc., a lack of medical services, extrajudicial killings, torture, abuse. And they're there for at least a year. So let's now get to the legal issues I'd like to raise quickly. Number one, I've seen some people suggesting that it's at least reasonable to make the argument that an invasion or incursion has occurred, which is necessary under the Alien Enemies Act. But when thinking about the Supreme Court, we do need to look at how the contemporaries of the bill define these terms, because that's how the Supreme Court functions. So it's noteworthy that James Madison, fairly important person, in 1800, round about the Alien Enemies Act, in his, quote, report on the Alien and Sedition Acts, stated, invasion is an operation of war.
Yes.
Incursion was treated like a limited version of an invasion. That is also how all the precedents have treated those two words.
Yes.
So it seems like a stretch.
Yeah.
Also, the foreign government component, it's got to be by a foreign government. With respect to the idea you mentioned before about Tren de Aragua being intertwined with the Venezuelan government or acting in concert with it. We already mentioned the US intelligence assessment saying that's not the case. Let me read the quote from that. They saw the gang as lacking the resources and being too disorganised, with little in the way of any centralised command and control to be able to carry out any government orders. And so they said that Tren de Aragua was not directed by Venezuelan government or committing crimes in the United States on its orders. And also, not only does the administration not actually think they are in cahoots with a foreign government, according to that, but they might not even be capable of behaving like invaders. That mob I told you about before, Insight Crime, the group that's been tracking Tren de Aragua for years, says they're only responsible for a small number of crimes in America, including petty crimes, not associated with the group's criminal portfolio. They also found no evidence of cells in the United States cooperating with one another or with other criminal groups, or proof of criminals receiving specific instructions from the organization's leadership or sending money to Venezuela or other foreign countries. So it doesn't really sound like an army.
No.
Does it?
Really does not.
Could the Supreme Court go for it anyway? Maybe. I mean, it's a stretch, but you never know with the Supreme Court. The key here of the Supreme Court is not that it's actually an invasion, but it's that it's so clearly not an invasion that they feel comfortable overruling Trump for the reasons you just talked about before.
Yeah.
The deference. What undermines Trump a little, though, is that he himself declared it wasn't an invasion.
Oh, really?
On March the 2nd.
Okay.
The invasion of our country is over, he said on March the 2nd, 2 weeks before this all happened. Interesting. I don't know how the Supreme Court will react to that. And then a couple more legal things that haven't been mentioned. The Fifth Amendment states that people may not be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Aha! Zero due process. And yes, the Fifth Amendment applies to illegal immigrants as well. Does it apply to people imprisoned in El Salvador? Well, those people were sent to El Salvador from America to be in prison. So you don't escape your constitutional obligations by disappearing people. There's also a precedent from the founding of the due process clause applying to foreign citizen pirates captured in international waters. Pretty good analogy there.
Yep.
And the fact that the Salvadoran government is doing the imprisoning, not America, well, America's paying for it to happen, $6 million. So
Yes.
obviously they have control of the situation. The second legal issue is the principle of non-refoulement, and that is when someone seeks asylum in a country, you're not supposed to return them to a country where they're at significant risk of human rights violations. There are statutes in America that ban refoulement, like the Foreign Affairs Reform and Restructuring Act of 1998. I've already read this out about not subjecting them to torture, etc. And America has signed treaties against it as well, like Article 3 of the Convention Against Torture, that says no state party shall expel, return, or extradite a person to another state where there are substantial grounds for believing they be in danger of being subjected to torture. The last thing I want to say is I just want to give a little bit of perspective here. As horrifying as this whole episode is to me, it's not unprecedented. I'm not talking about Japanese internment in World War II. I'm not talking about whatever ghoulish shit they did in 1812. I'm talking about extraordinary rendition.
Yes, absolutely.
George W. Bush.
Yes.
2002.
Yep.
We are old enough to remember it, Dave.
We are.
But some of the peppers may not be.
Okay.
About 150 people after 9/11 were snaffled up, sent to black sites in, say, Egypt, but on many countries, where they were tortured until they gave up more people who then got kidnapped and sent to black sites, and so on. It's just based on rumours, conjecture, tattletales. Some of them ended up in Gitmo for decades. Zero due process there as well. But at least in the case of rendition,
yes,
9/11 actually happened, as opposed to this fake
Yes.
war we're talking about
Yeah.
here. Still pretty bad though.
Yeah.
But I think the real problem here was identified by new Republican Senator for Utah, John Curtis, when he was talking about Trump calling for Boasberg to be impeached.
Just to button this up, I mean, you heard Leader Schumer say he thinks this is a constitutional crisis.
Yeah.
It sounds like you wouldn't go that far.
Well, listen, it's easy to throw out. And by the way, when everything's a crisis, nothing is a crisis. President Trump has been very clear multiple times he will obey court orders. So I don't see the crisis. And like I say, I see the civics lesson. Like, people need to be watching this and say, this is actually what our founders intended, this tension, right, between the three different branches. And Congress has our role in this, and you could fairly say we need to do more, and I'm with you, right? I think a lot of this opens up for the president when we don't do our job.
Okay, now he's trying to excuse Trump there, but I think leave the excuse out. I think his point is actually spot on.
Yes, yeah.
Which is the underlying issue for just about every problem right now is that Congress aren't doing their job.
Absolutely.
It's the same as the Atlantic Signal
Yes.
story as well. They've taken themselves out of the picture as a co-equal branch of government. And they're such slaves to Trump that they're providing absolutely no resistance when they're meant to provide tension.
Yes.
And the fact that there's no congressional investigation or special counsel about any of these things, all these flights, the signal thing, it's an absolute failure. It's Congress who actually has the power to hold Trump to account.
Yes.
And they're not using it, which means judges are trying to fill the breach. And judges are overreaching. That's the reason there's all these national injunctions all of a sudden. Because you know what? There are too many national injunctions. The administration is right. There are too many. But the reason they're there is because they're just trying to do the job for two branches at the same time.
That is correct.
Like if Congress were doing their job and defunding the executive when the executive overreaches and having investigations and holding people in contempt and doing things like that, they can get more information than a judge can. If they were doing their job properly, the judges wouldn't need to do this. The judges are pressing harder and harder to fill the constitutional role being abdicated by Congress. And what's Congress's response to this? They're trying to ban national injunctions. That's what Jim Jordan is currently trying to do. Right diagnosis, wrong solution. Like, 'cause that's just going to make it worse. They're just taking away even more accountability.
Yes.
But just to me, the absolute villains of this era of American politics is not Trump. I mean, I really don't like Trump right now, I've got to say. But he's not the villain. Congress is the villain, in my view. They are letting him become what he is by completely abdicating their duty.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not letting him off the hook.
No.
But I'm just saying the founding fathers imagined Trump would one day be president.
Yeah, yeah.
They actually envisaged that kind of president.
Yeah.
They talked about that kind of president. They never imagined this kind of Congress.
That's true.
That never occurred to them. And that's why the system is falling apart, in my view.
Yes.
Any extra thoughts on that?
Nope.
All right. Well, you got 20 minutes. So
Okay.
these are the stories that we got floating around, Dave.
Right.
You can choose.
Okay.
We've got Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
We've got, just we've got a lot of foreign policy stuff. Ukraine, Panama, Greenland, Canada. And then we've got what we're going to be missing when we take next week off.
Okay.
Like, for instance, we've got what's going on in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
We've got April 2, which is Liberty Day on tariffs.
Liberty Day.
We got what's going to happen in Congress, because Congress is about to change as well.
Yeah.
What do you want to talk about?
Let's talk foreign policy.
Let's talk foreign policy. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Should I start with Ukraine?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to start with Ukraine, or do you want me?
You start with
I'll
Ukraine. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And you jump in whenever you like, because I'm doing this in front of you for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, first of all, got some big news.
Yep.
It turns out Trump didn't solve the Ukraine war in 24 hours after all.
I'm not understating the complexity of all this, but as a candidate, you said you would have this war settled in 24 hours.
Well, I was being a little bit sarcastic when I said that. I would. What I really mean is I'd like to get it settled, and I think I'll be successful.
What's the plan if Putin doesn't agree to a ceasefire?
Bad news for this world, because so many people are dying. But I think he's going to agree. I really do. I think I know him pretty well, and I think he's going to agree.
Pretty thorough plan there.
I think I know him pretty well.
Yeah. Look, I played that long, so you could see
long
Trump.
and painful.
That way you could see Trump moving from his first delusion of the 24 hours to his second delusion of how Putin really wants peace. And he's going to make it work, because Putin clearly doesn't want a ceasefire. If that wasn't obvious before, it's become really obvious in the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Yes, yeah. And in the last 24 hours, when it's come out that one of the things that Russia is demanding is territory that Russian soldiers have never even been on.
I haven't heard this.
Hundreds of square kilometers
Tell me about this.
of territory, because he's demanding, that 6 complete regions are recognized as part of Russia.
Mm-hmm.
There are parts of those regions where there have been Russian troops, but Russian troops have never got to a lot of parts of those regions.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So that is one of the things that they're demanding at the moment, that Ukrainian troops actually withdraw from land that has never been occupied since the Soviet period.
I'm up to that in my reading. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say my broad thoughts, and like you can jump in with your broad thoughts as well.
Yeah.
My broad thoughts are essentially Putin is trying to waste time until he wins back the territory that Ukraine took off Russia last year.
Yes.
And the Kursk region. And the reason for that, and they're super slowly getting it back. And the reason for that is because Putin knows if he doesn't take that, if Zelensky keeps some of that when they actually have a real negotiation, they're going to have to trade.
Yes.
They have to trade Russian land for Ukrainian land. He doesn't want to trade any Ukrainian land. So he wants to keep on bullshitting Trump until he's taken back all that land.
Yes.
And then he'll be prepared to negotiate where the negotiation doesn't involve trading land at all.
Yeah.
That's my assumption.
Yeah, totally.
And he's happy to spin it out knowing that Trump just wants a press release after a press release.
Yes, yeah.
And he'll just keep on giving Trump more press releases while doing nothing and not actually making any progress at all, just to buy him time. That's basically my read of this situation.
I am pretty sure that that's what's going on.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, let's go through what's happened in the last few weeks while this has been happening. First of all, Trump had a 3-hour call with Putin, and you can tell how much Trump wanted that ceasefire, because he doesn't strike me as a 3-hour call kind of guy, even with Putin. Maybe when you like someone that much. I don't know. But anyway, we don't know what happened in that call exactly. But we know Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, was there. And apparently it was pretty awesome stuff.
It was these two great leaders coming together for the betterment of mankind. And it was honestly a privilege and an honor for me to sit there and listen to that conversation.
Oh my God. How do you get like that? And if I ever become like that, can you please put me in my misery?
But like, become like that towards whom?
Anyone.
Whose sidekick are you going to be?
Well, I maybe yours.
No. No.
I just follow you around saying that you're a great man in history. All you need to know about that call is look at the two sides' readouts.
Yep.
Because the American readout was like, today, President Trump and President Putin spoke about the need for peace and a ceasefire in Ukraine war. Both leaders agreed this conflict needs to end with a lasting peace. That sounds wonderful, doesn't it? Bear in mind, by the way, Ukraine had already agreed to a ceasefire, right? An unconditional ceasefire.
Yeah.
This is the Russian readout. The president of Russia expressed willingness to thoroughly work out possible solutions in cooperation with the American partners aimed at reaching a settlement that would be comprehensive, reliable and lasting, and naturally take into account the essential need to eliminate the root causes of the crisis, as well as Russia's legitimate security interests. So right at the top, that's the first paragraph.
Yeah.
They're talking about the root causes and Russia's security interests.
Yes.
For those who don't know the code, that means no Ukraine in NATO or no security guarantees for Ukraine for either America or Europe. That's what that means.
Yeah.
And then the next paragraph. During the conversation, Donald Trump put forward the proposal for the parties to mutually refrain from strikes on energy infrastructure for 30 days. Vladimir Putin responded favourably to the proposal and immediately gave the relevant order to Russian troops. Just as favourable was the Russian president's response to Donald Trump's suggestion to implement a well-known proposal regarding the safety of navigation in the Black Sea. So the ceasefire Russia is going to agree to is a ceasefire of bombing energy facilities, which seems very narrow.
It's incredibly narrow.
Ukraine, remember, agreed to a full 30-day ceasefire. Coincidentally, Ukraine has recently ratcheted up its attacks on gas and oil facilities in Russia. Coincidentally. Then it says, concerning US President's proposal to declare a 30-day ceasefire, the Russian side outlined a number of significant points regarding ensuring effective control over a possible ceasefire along the entire front line, as well as the need to stop the forced mobilization in Ukraine and rearming the armed forces of Ukraine. So, you can't rearm Ukraine if you want peace. No ceasefire while Ukraine has an army. Well, at least it's got to be a much smaller army. Then, it was pointed out that the complete cessation of providing Kyiv with a foreign military aid and intelligence must become the key condition for preventing any escalation of the conflict and making progress towards its resolution through political and diplomatic means. No more military aid or intelligence sharing for Ukraine. So for a peace deal, this has a lot of demands.
Yes.
From Russia's point of view. Not a lot of concessions going on. Note, Putin didn't pledge to abstain himself from seeking material support from his allies, nor did he pledge to take Russia's defense industrial base off its war footing. He just wanted Ukraine to pledge all that. Most of those demands didn't make their way into the US readout. And for what it's worth, Zelensky still said fine. He said if there's a partial ceasefire, this is a positive result. And he signalled Ukraine would accept a limited agreement. So far, after that first call, Trump's incredible knowledge of Putin is a little reminiscent of George W. Bush saying that he looked into Putin's eyes and saw his soul. It's a bit like that. Okay, so that's the first call. Then they were both struck against each other after that. Both said they broke the ceasefire. They never even had the agreement. They just talked about having the agreement. That's fine. I actually don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like until you got signed, there's no deal. So I think that's fine. Then yesterday, there was another deal. This is the Black Sea ceasefire that was foreshadowed. America was very positive. They said, the United States and Russia have agreed to ensure safe navigation, eliminate the use of force, and prevent the use of commercial vessels for military purposes in the Black Sea. So the US is going to help restore Russia's access to the world market for agricultural and fertilizer exports, they say, lower maritime insurance costs, and enhance access to ports and payment systems for such transactions. I don't know what that means, but it sounds like America's going to help Russia get some exports happening.
Yes.
Okay. In order to get one more tiny piece of a ceasefire. Because I should say, by the way, this doesn't really help anyone because Ukraine cleared out the Black Sea ages ago and lets Russian commercial ships go through.
Yes.
So there's kind of a ceasefire there already.
Yeah.
So it's kind of nothing.
Yeah.
But Russia's still got concessions anyway for this nothing, for the PR release. But let me get to the Russian readout. Here's the bit. Note, these provisions shall come into force after 1. Lifting sanctions restrictions from Roskosbank and other financial organisations involved in ensuring operations on international trade in food products and fertilisers, connecting them to SWIFT, that's the trading system, opening the necessary corresponding accounts, lifting restrictions on trade finance transactions, lifting sanctions restrictions on companies producing and exporting food and fertilisers, lifting restrictions on servicing ships in ports and sanctions against ships under the Russian flag involved in the trade of food products, lifting restrictions on the supply of agricultural machinery, as well as goods used in the production of food. So not only has America agreed to help them export a bunch of food in return for a peace that largely already existed, but they also agreed to remove sanctions in huge swathes of the economy. Not a bad deal for Russia in return for giving up nothing. And it's not a ceasefire. It's just an economics concession in return for a press release. So that's where we're at. And it might not even hold up because Ukraine just said, hang on, we didn't agree to any of those concessions.
Yes.
Zelensky said his country wouldn't agree to any easing of sanctions under a deal. This issue was not on the agenda before the meeting. We did not agree to have this in our common statement. Any comments so far, Dave?
Look, I'm just remembering the way that Donald Trump and his allies during the 24 election were saying, Kamala Harris, if she's in a negotiating room with these tough guys, they're just going to walk all over her. They're going to have her way, have their way with her. Like, this is exactly what is happening to Trump and Witkoff. They have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they are being trampled on by Russia. And with a big smile on their face. They do not know how badly they're being taken advantage of. Yeah.
In fact, I agree with you, and I'm not even sure you know, Dave, how little Witkoff understands what's going on. Because I've got a clip for you that's gonna rock your socks off.
Okay.
This is Witkoff talking to Tucker Carlson, and let's say his understanding of the region leaves a little bit to be desired.
I think the largest issue in that conflict are these so-called 4 regions: Donbass, Crimea, the names Lugansk, and there's 2 others. They're Russian-speaking.
Yep.
There have been referendums where the overwhelming majority of the people have indicated that they want to be under Russian rule.
I'm not going to be a hypocrite. Yeah. I'm going to be open. I'm going to openly admit I have the pronunciation for Zaporizhzhia, spelt out phonetically in front of me. Zaporizhzhia. I'm not the main envoy negotiating the fate of these 4 oblasts.
No.
One of which he can't pronounce.
Yes.
The other 3 he can't name, and he's thrown Crimea in there instead.
Yes.
The 4 oblasts, in case you're wondering, are Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhzhia. So that's embarrassing.
Yeah.
But not as embarrassing as him thinking the referendums they took in September 2022 were real referendums.
Yeah.
The only interviewer he could have had who wouldn't roll his eyes at that moment and laugh would have been Tucker Carlson.
Yes.
Those referendums were run by Russian-appointed officials at the point of a gun. Literally, the UN found pro-Russian authorities accompanied by soldiers going door to door with ballot boxes. Literally, guys with guns handing you ballots, asking you to fill it out in front of them.
Yes.
It's just... The UN Secretary General described it as a violation of the UN Charter and international law. So that's Witkoff, the guy negotiating this shit. And if it's not clear enough that he's got no idea what he's talking about, this is his response to the idea that Putin kills his opponents.
Do you feel like there's a misconception, though, about the characterization of him as a tyrant or someone whose political opponents often disappear or die?
I think in my 68 years on this earth,
I've never, ever seen a situation where there isn't two sides to a story. It's just never as black and white as people want to portray.
That's him talking about people being murdered by Putin. He's right. He's right. Look, I can't deny it. He's right. There are two sides of the story. There's a side of the wall that you're pushed out of, and there's the side on the ground that you land on, and then you're dead. They're the two sides to the story of being murdered by Vladimir Putin. So they're the guys who got negotiating the Ukraine.
But you know what? He's a real estate guy. And this is a real estate deal.
They'll get a deal, all right.
Yeah, I think we're going to see the limits of the real estate metaphor.
Dave, we're out of time for you.
Yes.
Do you have anything you want to say before you go on any of the other topics or anything at all?
This was a cheerful episode, wasn't it? Okay. Nothing more to say, but I will see everybody in 2 weeks' time.
Indeed. Oh, can you do me one favour?
Yes.
Just before you go, can you spend just a minute just describing the Wisconsin thing, and then I'll pick it up from there?
Oh, yeah. So there's a Wisconsin Supreme Court election. This is very important because the court is divided 4-3. So that's 4 liberal, 3 conservative. That division was very important in the 2020 election when that was the vote on a lawsuit that would have deprived 223,000 people in Wisconsin's 2 most Democratic counties of their votes. So, in other words, this could go full Yahoo court if a conservative wins that 4th position. I'm using the terms conservative and liberal because these are technically non-partisan elections. Probably under normal circumstances, given it's an off-year election, the Liberal would be expected to win.
Yes.
Elon Musk, though, is pumping quite a lot of money into this race. He's expected to spend $20 million, although the overall spend on the race is $73 million. So what's he done by putting all this money in the race? He's turned it into a referendum on Elon Musk.
Which is a bad idea in Wisconsin.
This is now how Democrats are campaigning. Keep Musk off the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Yeah. So, we'll see how this election goes. It is it's on April 1st.
And basically, just so you know, the biggest issue in Wisconsin for the last, I'd say, decade has been gerrymandering.
Absolutely.
And so what rides on this is 2 seats in the House, essentially, because if the Conservative wins, he's going to make sure that Republicans can gerrymander.
Yep.
And if the Liberal wins, they'll make sure that they can't.
Yes, because they're currently, so Wisconsin has 8 congressional districts, 6 of them are Republican. This is not because 3/4 of the state votes Republican.
Yes.
Wisconsin is a very 50-50 state.
It is. Okay, Dave, thank you very much for that.
My pleasure.
I will see you after the break.
Yes.
Till then, stay peppy.
Stay peppy.
And for all of you watching, see you after the white flash with Lockie in this hot little sea. Welcome to the other side of the white flash. Dr. Dave has manifested into Lockie, and the hourglass is back, hopefully not in front of Lockie's face. As you can see, it's 4 hours is ticking away. Look, to be fair, we have taken quite a number of quite long breaks here. So this is more like probably 3.5 to 3:40, I reckon, in this hourglass today.
But as I said off camera, the glass was not paused, not by accident.
I will honour the glass regardless, even though I was counting down during breaks. It's looking magnificent. We're gonna find a proper place to put that in the next podcast. I don't think I dealt with it terribly well because I was so shocked when I saw it before, but I am extremely grateful, quite touched, and thanks, guys. That was really nice. But now it is time for... We're not going to go too long on this one because times are ticking. But there are just a few leftovers I'd like to cover before the break. There's heaps of stuff I'm not going to get into. I still haven't done the court précis of
Doge. Whoa.
My God, it's going to be so big. I've got 2 weeks to work on it. But first of all, I got Dave to start Wisconsin because I I got him to do the preparation for that, and I wasn't ready to do it myself. But I did just want to just add two things to what Dave said before about Wisconsin, before we get back to Ukraine, because I stopped halfway through Ukraine. The first thing is Dave talked about the Elon Musk is back with the bribery. What he's referring to is, do you remember during the general election how he had these petitions people signed? Like if you're in favor of freedom and stuff like that, sign this petition and you get $100.
It's coming back to me. I slightly remember, yeah.
And there was all this debate about whether it was legal or not legal. And I think most people thought it's probably not legal, but it's kind of borderline.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely immoral. You're buying because you're not buying people's vote. You are buying their data. That's what that's what he's doing. He wants you to sign the petition, and when you get the $100, you give him your data when you get the $100 for him to send the check to you, which means that then they can spam you on election day. That's the plan.
Okay.
Right? That's the idea. Anyway, it went to court. Pennsylvania were like, we're going to take you down. And then after the election, they said, oh, who gives a stuff? Just forget it. And they just dropped it. So now he's just doing it again. He's doing the same thing.
Sweet.
$100 to Wisconsin voters to sign a petition expressing their opposition to activist judges. Whatever. And then you got Dave was talking about how this has backfired because now Elon Musk has become the focus of the election campaign, and he is the least popular anything in America at the moment. So the Democrats would love to run an election against Elon Musk. And if you look at their ads, they basically are running against Elon Musk.
Firing air traffic controllers, cutting rape crisis centers, attacking Social Security. Elon Musk is out of control. And now the power-hungry billionaire is unloading millions to buy the Wisconsin Supreme Court. He knows MAGA politician Brad Schimmel is for sale and will abolish the checks and balances that protect us. He thinks he's above the law. Protect our last line of defense. Vote Susan Crawford for Supreme Court.
She's going to beat Elon Musk, according to that ad. How much do they love the salute?
That was my takeaway. Yeah, gee.
They love the salutes. Yeah. Anyway, so that's all I want. And that election is April 1. So that's going to be early next week, or Tuesday.
You know what that does mean?
What does that mean?
He's going to make the absolute worst joke on Twitter about the result, should it not go his way, being an April Fool.
Of course he will. You're right.
I know how his brain works because I too am not very funny.
I thought you were about to say, I know how his brain works because I too have a dad. Let's go back to Ukraine because
Yes.
I hadn't quite finished that when I saw the clock run out. Not that clock, the
Dave clock.
The clock that no one cares about, which is the actual ticking clock, as opposed to this beautiful hourglass. With Ukraine, all I was going to say two more things. One is, while it might be frustrating to Ukraine and supporters of Ukraine seeing Russia so easily manipulate Trump, it's kind of working out for them because all these terrible, like what happened in the White House and all the demands, but essentially the more unreasonable Trump seems to be and the more he's bending over for Russia, the more popular it's making Ukraine. Like, have a look at the Gallup polling there between December 24 and March 25. What we're looking at here is a poll on, do you think the United States is doing too much to help Ukraine, not enough, or the right amount? And the dark blue line, if you're looking at this,
that's a big spike.
That's a big spike. That's people saying America's not doing enough to help Ukraine.
It's an all-time high as well.
Exactly. It's gone from 30% up to 46%. Until now, the all-time high was 38%, right at the beginning after the invasion. And so 46% that's gangbusters. And that's just because Ukraine's been copping so much flack from Trump. So it's actually really working out well for them. It's going to be, if this keeps up, Trump is going to be forced by popular opinion. Because, he's always going to go with popular opinion. He's going to be forced by popular opinion to be much more generous to Ukraine. So this is actually working out okay for them. But there's one other thing that I think is a real watch. When we're talking about things that, like punishment from that Ukraine is taking, this is right up there. I don't think they'd want to trade this for a few extra points in polls. There was a State Department contract awarded to by Joe Biden to Yale University back in 2023 to identify and locate Ukrainian children taken by Russia. Because I'm not sure you know this, but there were 30,000 Ukrainian children who were kidnapped from their families, and Russia stole them.
I did not know that.
And
Wow.
they've tried to Russianize them, essentially. And Ukraine want them back. Unsurprisingly, that's a key condition of any peace deal with Ukraine. Now, it's all right to say that, but you need to be able to identify who they are, or Russia's just gonna say, I don't know who you're talking about. What are you talking about? I've got no idea. It's a war crime, obviously, as well, to steal children. Yale has located, using satellite imagery, biometric data, other means, thousands of these kids, but they've still got some time to go. It announced the identities of 314 of them back in December. Remember, there's 30,000 of them. And it presented some evidence to the United Nations Security Council about it. But in January, the program was frozen because it was through USAID, and it was frozen with a bunch of other stuff, right?
So they're not currently not being located.
That's right. That's not the problem, though.
Oh.
I mean, that is a problem.
It's a problem, but not...
But the biggest problem is now the program's been closed down.
Also, it can't return.
Yeah, and what's happened to the evidence that they collected?
Oh.
Because some of it has been presented in reports, but lots of it hasn't. So that's the fear. The fear is, where's the underlying evidence gone and the data tracking gone? Because they need that for court. They need that for like to put pressure on Russia. And that data needs to be transferred to Europol or Ukraine. And right now, people aren't 100% sure where it is. Oh, by the way, the program only cost $13 million. So it's not like they're saving lots of money. But Peter Murata, who got his fingerprints all over this, he's Elon Musk's buddy, and he's not a big fan of Ukraine. He was certainly talking about getting rid of it before Trump was in power. And the State Department spokesperson now, Tammy Bruce, said the funding's been cut based on the assessments that we've been making regarding what was defining work within our framework of what was in America's interest. So they're saying it's not in America's interest. It's not in America's interest to stop their adversary from committing war crimes, apparently. Yeah. The data hasn't been deleted, which is a relief, because there were fears at one point in time that when they closed down the program, they just deleted the data.
Sure.
But one of the subcontracting partners still holds it. They haven't got it yet. So hopefully it will eventually get back to Ukraine. We don't know. Either way, interesting assessment of what's in America's interest. But that's the last thing I think is worth following in regards to Ukraine. Keep an eye on that particular program. All right, Greenland. I'm not going to do the whole Greenland. I'm going to do the bits without Dave, because we actually got this extremely lengthy email from Nick back in February. Great email, Nick. Sorry, I only just got to it. I've been working backwards when I've been going through emails. And I just got back to your email from early February. It's the ultimate Greenland correspondence.
Sweet.
It's like Nick's a bit of a Danophile. He lived in Denmark for a while. He's not Danish, but he's got a lot of great information.
Cool.
And he asked some questions of Dr. Dave, and Dr. Dave's going to answer them, but obviously he's not here anymore, and I don't think you can answer the questions.
On any subject.
So, Nick, I'll save the bit that was about your correspondence and then going through it for Dr. Dave, but I'll go through the rest of the Greenland stuff now. Trump really needs to stop saying things like this.
And I also have a message tonight for the incredible people of Greenland. We strongly support your right to determine your own future And if you choose, we welcome you into the United States of America. We need Greenland for national security and even international security, and we're working with everybody involved to try and get it. But we need it really for international world security, and I think we're going to get it. One way or the other, we're going to get it.
Even though his script was written actually to be quite humble and supporting of Greenland's wishes, he couldn't help but improvise a threat.
Yeah.
One way or another, we'll get it as a joke. He delivered it as a joke.
As all good threats are delivered.
And in fact, they were laughing just at the word Greenland.
Right from the get-go.
Yeah, right from the get-go as a punchline. And then Trump delivered like a punchline. Do you think the Greenlanders wouldn't have seen that? Do you think the Greenlanders wouldn't have taken that as an insult? And exactly why they don't have anything to do with America?
Were Dave here, Dave would make the point that he commonly makes about how Trump is disregarding the nationalism of every other country as not being as strong as America's nationalism.
You've been listening. That's well done.
Nah, just reading the Spark Notes.
Man, can you imagine how long the book of the Spark Notes of PEP would be? Look, I genuinely thought, right at the beginning when we were talking about this, I thought there was an opportunity there for America if Greenland did decide to declare their independence, and then they could have an arrangement with Greenland. And I mean, there may still eventually be that deal, but it ain't going to be with Trump, because the people with Greenland, they must sense the disrespect. It's just so palpable.
Yeah.
And so the Danish people. I mean, here's another example right here.
What is your vision for the potential annexation of Greenland and getting them potentially to
Well, I think it'll happen, and I'm just thinking, I didn't give it much thought before, but I'm sitting with a man that could be very instrumental. You know, Mark, we need that for international security, not just security, international.
I think it's just going to happen, he says. Just disregarding the views of the Greenland people. There's no more humility there. It's just, it's going to happen.
One way or another.
Yeah, exactly. The chairs of Greenland's 5 political parties responded to that with a joint statement declaring they cannot, quote, cannot accept the repeated statements on annexation and control, and they find this conduct unacceptable to friends and allies in a defence alliance. At the time, the PM said, enough is enough. I don't blame him. That's fair. Anyway, the results are there for all to see, because they just held an election 2 weeks ago, and what happened was the centre-right party, which favours a gradual independence from Greenland, is 29.9%. That won. The party which favours rapid independence from Greenland and is more supportive of Trump got 24.5%.
Interesting.
The leftist incumbent ruling party got 21.5%, and some party called Simut, which I have no idea what that is, got 14.7%. The point is that they went from having a party which was keen to get independence and then potentially make a deal with America to now a party that wants to slow it down.
Right.
And I reckon that's probably related to Trump. Yeah. So the numbers, I mean, this is just so typical. This is just so typical what's happening with Trump at the moment, where his diplomacy is just backfiring. His inverted commas diplomacy is just backfiring, and he's getting a worse result. I mean, I don't know.
A worse result internationally.
Yeah. I mean, I look, maybe they have protests all the time in Greenland, but they've only got a few thousand people. And they're having protests like this outside the American embassy.
Those are drums of war, Chaz.
I would not be messing with those Greenlanders, I have to say. They're scary. And then this week got worse.
I hope they don't think we're laughing at them. I'm not mocking their independence, actually.
I'm 100% serious when I say I would not be messing with them.
Yeah, cool.
Personally, I'm talking about. I mean, Trump can mess with them, but he's not going to work out well for him. in Greenland at least. Then this week got worse when it was announced that Usha Vance would be visiting the island with Mike Waltz. I mean, everything gets worse when Mike Waltz is involved this week. And Energy Secretary Chris Wright. She said lovely things on Instagram. Like she was the ultimate diplomat. She said, I'm particularly thrilled to visit during your national dog sled race, which our country is proud to support and to sponsor. I've been reading all about it with my children, and I'm amazed by the incredible skill and teamwork that it takes to participate in this race. I'm also coming to celebrate the long history of mutual respect and cooperation between our nations and to express hope that our relationship will only grow stronger in the coming years. I look forward to meeting many of you soon and to learning from you about your beautiful land, culture and tradition. That's nice. The outgoing PM, Egede, he's really had enough though. He replied to that, to this visit with, he's not going to meet them.
Whoa.
At all. And he said, we are now at a level where it can in no way be characterised as a harmless visit from a politician's wife. Because what is the security advisor doing in Greenland? The only purpose is to show a demonstration of power to us, and the signal is not to be misunderstood. See, Mike Waltz screws up everything. His mere presence in Greenland will no doubt fuel American belief in Trump's mission, and the pressure will increase. Until recently, we could trust the Americans, who are our allies and friends and with whom we enjoyed working closely. That time is over.
Yeah, fair read. This is why I'm not a diplomat. Wow.
By the way, that guy there, he's the one who favoured rapid independence from Denmark.
Well, okay.
He's the one America needed to make friends with. So, yeah. I'm not sure Waltz and Chris Wright are coming anymore because now Vance is coming instead. Like, Vance is coming with his wife. That's supposed to make sense. I'm not sure he's going to help things, though, because this is what he said last month.
Denmark, which controls Greenland, it's not doing its job and it's not being a good ally. So you have to ask yourself, how are we going to solve that problem, solve our own national security? If that means that we need to take more territorial interest in Greenland, that is what President Trump is going to do, because he doesn't care about what the Europeans scream at us. He cares about putting the interests of America's citizens first.
Yeah, that's not going to go down well.
No, it's not. It's not. And then after that, Trump was asked about this visit, and he said people from Greenland are asking us to go there. Greenland's government responded directly to that with, just for the record, the government of Greenland has not extended any invitations for any visits, neither private nor official. So, they're kicking all kinds of goals, the Trump administration. Reuters polling, by the way, shows when asked whether the US should take control of Greenland so the US military can better guard the country, 27% of Americans approve to 69% disapproving.
Whoa.
I can't think of a lot of things that
we
poll
get-
worse than 27%. Elon Musk doesn't poll worse than 27%. So I'd probably drop this one if I was Trump, but he knows best. His terrible diplomacy, though, it isn't just costing Greenland. I saw an article in Defense One magazine. Trump's calls to seize Greenland from Denmark and turn Canada into America's 51st state pose a real challenge for the F-35 program, as both countries fly the fifth-generation combat jet and rely on US spare parts and software supplies. And it says the US could degrade allies' F-35s by withholding spare parts. I think that's paranoia. No, that's not true. They can withhold spare parts. They can cancel services. They can block software updates. That's not with a kill switch. The paranoia is the kill switch. And obviously what happened with Ukraine adds to that as well in the White House. If people think they can no longer rely on America's goodwill, why would they waste money on planes that require America's goodwill? That if you don't get spare parts, you can't fly. So this is actually affecting the commercial bottom line for Trump as well. With Panama, look, don't want to go too much into this. I just got a correspondence, which I've had just sitting here for ages. Dan writes, Chaz, you came close to calling Panama a shithole country. Big fan. I know what you mean, but yeah. Not my best wording, I admit. Yeah, I was just getting tired and like I am now. But yeah, look, the fact is there are some pretty big countries he's trying to bully as well, like Canada, which takes us to our next correspondence from GovNerd. Next pod, could you talk about what the hell is happening with the polls in Canada? According to CBC poll tracker, the Liberal odds of winning the next election have gone from less than 1% on Trump's inauguration day to 77% at the time of this comment.
That can't be true. That's crazy.
Could we be witnessing the start of a Trump bump for incumbents able to capitalize on anti-Trump sentiment and general uncertainty? You see how it's crazy here? Look at the League of Polling right there. I brought it up. Look at that. Red line is the incumbents. They're the Liberal Party. They're the left. That's Trudeau's party. They went from being 25 points down at the start of this year to 6 points up as of the last polls.
Soccer is a game of two halves.
Yes. And that might be why Mark Carney, the new leader, just called an election. And guess who is featuring in the Canadian campaign?
We are facing the most significant crisis of our lifetimes because of President Trump's unjustified trade actions and his threats to our sovereignty. Our response must be to build a strong economy and a more secure Canada. President Trump claims that Canada isn't a real country. He wants to break us so America can own us. We will not let that happen. We're over the shock of the betrayal, but we should never forget the lessons. We have to look out for ourselves. We have to look out for each other.
That strategy is, well, it's winning a lot of plaudits on CNBC at least.
I'm going to say this at risk of my job, Kelly, but what President Trump is doing is insane. It is absolutely insane. It is about the 8th reason we've had for the tariffs, and now he's saying he's putting 50% tariffs on Canada unless they agree to become the 51st state. That is insane. There is just no other way of describing it.
So so they're not happy either. But they're Americans, so they're allowed to be unhappy. But this does actually lead to something which is emerging as a real option, and that is, could Canada join the EU?
Ooh, well, if Australia can join Eurovision.
This is the thing.
Yeah.
You don't need to be in Europe to join. And you have to be a full member. Canada could join the European Economic Area. That's what Norway did back in 1994. That would grant Canada full access to the single market in exchange for contributing to the EU budget and implementing EU rules, but with no representation in EU institutions. And why would you want that representation, really? Why would we be part of that parliament? Or they could make a series of bilateral agreements similar to the Swiss model, where Canada preserves its sovereignty, and in return, Canadians have some access to the single EU market through a lot of negotiation. As of February, before the latest round of tariffs, about 45% of Canadians supported joining the EU, and 25% were undecided as well. So there's probably a majority there.
It's coming up, yeah.
Especially given that was a month ago. So let's see how high Trump can push those numbers up. Because if he pushes Canada into the EU, that could be a real pain for America. So we'll see about if that backfires as well. Look, I've got more to say about foreign policy, but I'm going to leave that for Dave because I want to discuss a few things with him. Sorry, Lockie, no offense.
No, the opposite of offense taken.
But what I am going to do is I'm going to do a couple more while we're away. Like we talked to Wisconsin before. Congress is about to improve for Mike Johnson. The GOP, we've talked about how they have a 1-seat majority. It's about to change. It was 218, 215 last we talked about it. 2 Democratic seats have become vacant following the recent deaths of 2 ancient Democrats because they're all old, giving Republicans a 5-seat majority. But then after that's happened, like that just happened, what's about to happen on April 1, so next week, Musk can make his joke, 2 Florida special elections are going to replace Matt Gaetz, and Mike Waltz in the House. And so they're going to be Republicans, both of them. So that margin's going to expand to 220 to 213, which is room for 3 Republican no's.
Yeah.
After that, then Elise Stefanik, they can finally get her to resign her seat. She can get confirmed to the UN. They're going to end up with 219, 213. So back to 2 votes. But that's better than 1 vote, which is what they've been on. So a little bit of relief for Mike Johnson there. And just a couple of things at the end here. I want to end on a positive note. Like it's been so dark. And I'm saying a couple of things. I might make this a segment. Might need a sting.
Might need a name.
Might need a name before. I'll come up with a name before the sting. So don't do any stings until I give you the name. But it'll be something about good things. I don't know. Maybe it's just good things. No, don't do the sting yet. I'll try and think of something better. A couple of things I saw, I thought, oh, that's not bad. This is not evil. This is not malign. This is not horrible. The FDA has unveiled a new tool that allows people to look up chemical contaminants in foods from a large database. It's called the Chemical Contaminants Transparency Tool, and it includes tolerances, action levels, guidance levels, derived intervention levels, recommended maximum levels, advisory levels of contaminants. I'll put in the homework. You can have a look for yourself. It's hard to navigate around, but they've only just started. Hopefully they'll make it more user-friendly. You can see it in the homework right there. But, you know, like Robert Kennedy's RFK's been talking about this shit forever. This is a harmless way of dealing with that kind of stuff. Good. Doing no harm.
Okay.
Good on him. You know, I didn't say it's the best thing on earth, but, you know, that's a positive. It's got no publicity. But, yeah, I saw it and I thought, oh, that's okay. Give him a pat on the head for that. And the next thing, I quite like this. The Departments of Interior and the Department of Housing and Urban Development have created a combined task force to study how federal land could be used to alleviate America's housing crisis, like the housing affordability crisis.
Oh, okay.
Because there's a shortage of houses. That's why there's an affordability crisis. And this is what they're going to say.
HUD will work with DOI to assess the housing needs in areas where federal lands may be available yet underutilized and implement tailored housing programs with guidance from states and localities.
This partnership will identify underutilized federal lands suitable for residential development and streamline the land transfer process. It'll also promote policies to increase the availability of affordable housing while balancing important environmental and land use considerations.
Okay, so they're not exactly dripping with charisma. I grant you that. But the idea of unlocking federal land around cities like Las Vegas, Phoenix, and Salt Lake City, where they've got lots of federal land, which isn't particularly environmentally important, it's just wasteland, essentially. If they can create new houses, affordable new houses, dropping prices everywhere as a result, as long as it's not an environmental issue, that sounds intelligent to me. It's worth a try. Housing developments on just 512,000 acres out of the government's 640 million acres would result in 3 to 4 million homes. That would make an impact.
That would do a dent to the market.
Yeah, so I'll give them a tip of the hat. Like, it's worth a try. I'm not saying it's going to work, but, you know, it's better than sending people to El Salvador, for Christ's sake. All right, okay. And then final thought, I just couldn't fit this in anywhere, but I just wanted to just make a comment because it annoys me. Jasmine Crockett was being a bit of a comedian the other night. She's a bit of an up-and-comer amongst the Democrats. And, she was emceeing, I think, or something like that. So she was trying to be funny, but this is what she came out with.
Thank you so much, Morgan, because we in these hot-ass Texas streets, honey. Y'all know we got Governor Hot Wheels down there. Come on now. And the only thing hot about him is that he is a hot-ass mess, honey. So,
And for those who have no idea what was going on there.
Thank you.
She's talking about Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, who's been in a wheelchair for the last 20 years because he was paralyzed by a tree falling on him.
Oh.
When she said Governor Hot Wheels, she's talking about a dude in a wheelchair.
Ah.
Now, the thing is, Jasmine Crockett, the reason why she's becoming quite a household name in America and she's becoming increasingly prominent amongst Democrats is because, you know, she's young and attractive and all the rest of it, but also she's smart and she's really good at sass. Like she did the bad Bill blonde
Okay.
thing with Margaret Taylor.
She's got lines.
Yeah, she's got lines. Like she's good at social media. She's good at insulting people. She's not so good at policy, but she's good at she's the one that they stuck a camera, a mic in her face and said, "What message do you have for Elon Musk? If Elon Musk was here or something," and she'd say, "Fuck off."
Okay.
Like that's her style, right? And people the Democrats want someone who fights, someone who can talk back and can put people in their place. That's her. She fights. Oh, she definitely fights, and she has lots of sass. But just I know she's trying to be funny there. We all make mistakes, but I think she's in danger of buying her own hype a little bit. And this is that's not helping anyone. As a politician, it's not helping anyone to go around calling paraplegics Governor Hot Wheels, right? I'm not offended by it, but it strikes me as evidence that she may be losing her way a little bit.
Sure.
And that she's more interested in becoming an insult comedian than she is in becoming a constructive legislator. You don't hear much from her about legislation. In fact, her reputation has been quite lazy. But she punches above her weight through insults and through cutting through with rhetoric. Don't become Nancy Mace, Jasmine Crockett. That's all I'm saying. She's a smart person. She was an attorney for years before she was a congressperson. Don't become Nancy Mace. I will.
Good advice.
I will.
For us all to remember. Now, Chaz,
good advice for everyone. We're done. We're done.
Just as you were finishing up your thoughts on that joke, all done. Thank you very much to the wonderful people who gifted that.
Thank you. Well, you saved Lockie for I don't know how many hours now, because we have to end now because we've run out of sand. So are the days of our lives, Lockie. We are going to take a 2-week break for those who it's just one PEP. We're back in 2 weeks. For those who somehow missed that, we'll be back with Dave in 2 weeks' time, and we're going to be one way or another. The commercial thing is decided in 2 weeks, one way or another. Sound like Trump talking about Greenland.
It'll happen.
Yeah, that's right. No, it's definitely we're going to be back. And there will be changes. I don't know if the changes are going to be commercial changes and non-commercial changes, but there will be changes. We will be back, and we will be a little bit different when you return. I'm not saying all transformation will be over, but we've got a bunch of things lined up either way, and one of them's going to happen. And I think I know which one it's going to be. I think it's going to be commercialized, and you got some stuff up your sleeve, don't you, Lucky?
We have a lot of things, a lot of buttons that we are waiting to press, and a lot of dominoes that we're very excited to push over.
So that is hopefully quite exciting. What that means is, though, it means over the next few months we're going to ask you a few times to spread the word about the podcast, because they ain't going to be spreading the word on the ABC. Anyway, have a good 2 weeks. Not even Easter. We're going to go through Easter, but have a nice Melbourne Comedy Festival at least. I'm going to be down there seeing a few shows, so I might catch you in Melbourne. Might catch you at the Bulldogs game. Whoa, I'm so excited!
Very important for any Ozpol fans. Happy election! It's
It's
getting announced on Friday.
Oh wow! How about that?
I think.
Well, that is good news for everyone who cares. In the meantime, I'm going to be at the Bulldogs game.
Yeah.
Yay. See you guys in 2 weeks. See you in 2 weeks, Lockie.
See you in 2 weeks,
Till
Chaz.
then, stay peppy.